I was born from an affair. I was born as the result of my mother's affair. My father recently told me the truth and said he would not pay for my college, even though he fully paid for my brothers and sisters' education. Everything is exactly as it sounds, and I don't know how to process it. I'm 18 years old, and I feel completely unprepared for what comes next. My older brother and sister both attended the same college. My brother graduated 2 years ago, and my sister will finish in 2 more years. My father paid for everything for both of them: tuition, housing, food, cars, spending money, anything they needed. My brother now has a stable job, his own place, and lives with his fiancée. My sister already has a well-paid part-time job, and my father still covers most of her expenses. I was also accepted into that same college, which had always been my dream. I was excited to talk to my parents about next steps and expected the same support my siblings received. I truly believed the money for my education had already been set aside, just like it was for them. Instead, my parents told me the truth. My mother had cheated years ago, and I was the result of that affair. My father said he would no longer support me financially. He told me my mother had 18 years to tell me the truth and prepare me for my future, but she never did. He said it wasn't his place to tell me because I wasn't his biological son, and he didn't want to interfere in how my mother raised me. I later learned that my grandparents had known the truth as well, yet they never told me either. My brother and sister had no idea and were just as shocked as I was. There had never been any hints that something was wrong. Maybe I was naive, but I always believed my relationship with my father was strong. We went to sports games together, went fishing, and he helped me when I struggled with math. He's an engineer, and he taught me how to drive. I never felt like he resented me. He gave me my name, explained its meaning, and was proud of it. He used to tell that story often. My mother never told me anything. Looking back, I now understand she should have had that conversation with me long ago, but she never did. I feel abandoned and completely unprepared for the future. I don't even know if I can still attend college. I never worked because I was certain my parents would support my education. I don't know what kind of job I could get or how to balance work and school. I don't understand loans, financial aid, or any of it. My mother cries and apologizes, but she doesn't know how to help. I don't even know if I'm still welcome at home. I feel ashamed leaving my room, and if I were asked to leave, I wouldn't know where to go. I have no savings, about $400 at most. I'm angry at my mother, confused about my relationship with my father, and overwhelmed by the thought that somewhere out there is a biological father who never wanted anything to do with me. Update 1. I spoke with my mother yesterday. I wanted to say more, but I lost my nerve halfway through the conversation. The important thing is that I'm not being kicked out of the house and I haven't been disowned. My father wasn't home at the time. A week earlier, my grandfather had suffered a stroke, and my father was helping my grandmother arrange in-home care. I plan to contact the college's financial aid office and figure out my options. Update 2. My grandfather passed away yesterday morning. I'm physically okay, but everything else feels secondary right now. My sister knows everything and told me not to worry. She's fully on my side and supports me. For now, my focus is on being there for my grandmother. Update 3. Things have mostly returned to a sense of normalcy given everything that happened. I was finally able to talk openly with both my mother and my father, and I now understand where I stand with them as well as with my brother and sister. Both of my parents love me. What happened weeks ago was an emotional overreaction during an intense argument between them, worsened by stress and grief over my grandfather's illness and death. I'm going to college, exactly the one I always wanted to attend, and my experience will be the same as my siblings. The money was never truly the issue. My family is not struggling financially. My father had an emotional breakdown during an already overwhelming time. Even if my father had followed through with his decision, my grandmother later told me that my grandfather left money to be divided equally among me, my brother, and my sister, enough for my education.
The entire conflict started because of terrible timing. My parents had just argued, and I walked in asking about paying for my college. During their argument, my mother referenced the past, and my father misunderstood her words as justification of the affair itself. Things escalated quickly, and emotions spiraled out of control. Since then, my parents have reconciled, though both are still grieving in their own ways. I've spoken with my brother and sister, and we're okay. I'm still processing everything, but I'm moving forward.
My sister completely lost it and rushed over immediately, yelling at our parents on the phone the entire way. My brother was calmer, but when he got home, he made his opinion very clear as well. The death of our grandfather seemed to cool everyone down and shift the focus toward dealing with grief rather than conflict. Reading through advice from others was eye-opening. I realized how unprepared I was for the real world. Many people asked how it was possible that I didn't know anything about student loans or grants. The truth is simple. When you grow up believing year after year that college is already paid for, you never feel the need to think about those things. I knew loans and financial aid existed, but I never thought they would apply to me. In less than 24 hours, my reality flipped completely from "I'm going to college and everything is set" to "you're not my biological son and I'm not paying for your education." Many people grow up knowing they'll need loans, jobs, housing, and backup plans. I didn't. For me, it was a sudden and brutal shift. Going through advice helped me build a list of practical steps: what jobs students can realistically get, how to find housing, how to open a bank account, apply for a credit card, choose a mobile plan, and manage basic independence. Even now, with things stabilizing, that knowledge still feels important. It gave me confidence that I won't be completely lost if things ever fall apart again. Some of the things people said about my parents were harsh. Reading it hurt, and I didn't even get through all of it. I don't want to imagine what else was written. My father feels deeply ashamed of how he reacted. He apologizes often. I understand that he wasn't in a good emotional state, but that doesn't erase the pain. I can understand his reaction and still be hurt by it. Despite everything, this didn't permanently damage our relationship. We'll be okay. My mother struggled more than anyone. Over time, she answered questions she had avoided for years. When she had the affair and became pregnant with me, my parents began divorce proceedings. She moved in with the man she had been seeing, but after a few months, he decided he didn't want anything to do with her. He threw her out while she was pregnant, and she had nowhere to go. My grandparents took her in because she was still the mother of their grandchildren. After years of working through things, my parents reconciled. My father chose to accept me as his own. My biological father has never been part of my life. My father barely knew who he was, and my mother never saw or heard from him again. He knew she was pregnant with his child. He just didn't care. I have no desire to know more about him. I've thought about it for weeks, and I don't feel any pull to find him, learn his name, or discover whether I have half-siblings somewhere. Some suggested DNA tests. I could probably find him that way, but I won't. I don't want to find him, and I don't want him to find me. What matters is this: I have a mother, a father, a brother, and a sister. That is my family. I plan to get a job and become more independent, not to distance myself from my family, but to know that I can survive in the world if everything ever falls apart again. My mother admitted that I was sheltered far more than my siblings, and that my parents should have prepared me better for adulthood. Now I understand my place in my family. I am loved, and I have options. I thought I was isolated, but my world turned out to be much bigger than I realized. My grandparents, my siblings, my aunt, my cousins, all of them are on my side. My parents are ordinary people. They make mistakes. This wasn't their best moment, but I choose to see it as a moment of weakness within an otherwise loving family.
Flirting with 19-year-olds. I'm 31 years old and recently came out of a long-term relationship. I was emotionally wrecked and trying to get back to feeling normal. One night, a friend and I went to a nice bar restaurant downtown, a place where people of all ages usually hang out. While we were there, a group of girls was celebrating a birthday. Staff came out singing happy birthday, and they brought a cake with candles shaped like the number 19. The birthday girl was attractive, so I decided to go over and say hello. Her friends were also pretty. My friend immediately told me it was a bad idea and said they looked way too young. At first, he didn't even want to come with me, but eventually followed along just to make sure nothing went wrong. We congratulated the birthday girl, and at first, everything seemed fine. The girls laughed, and I thought the conversation was going okay. Then, suddenly, one of them snapped and told me to take the hint and leave. I was caught off guard and apologized, but she said I was making them uncomfortable and needed to read the room. Another girl asked us to go. I was about to leave, but then someone compared me to R. Kelly. That hit a nerve. Being associated with predatory behavior made me furious. I told them that comparison was unfair and ridiculous. We were all adults. My friend tried to pull me away, but I stood my ground. The birthday girl said it was weird for someone my age to flirt with them, especially when it was obvious they were uncomfortable. She made another R. Kelly joke, asking if she reminded me of a certain singer. That pushed me over the edge. I apologized again for making them uncomfortable, but said that didn't give them the right to label me a predator. One of them said that was my problem, not theirs. I argued that adults are allowed to flirt with other adults. It's not illegal. Eventually, one of them yelled at me to leave. I walked away furious and humiliated. As I did, their entire table started singing Ignition Remix and laughing hysterically. Back at our table, I was shaking with anger. My friend told me the whole situation was my fault and that it had been obvious from the start that they were uncomfortable. I pointed out that they had been laughing, but he said it was nervous laughter, not genuine. I said I had every right to be upset about being called a creep when they were all 18 or 19. That's a serious accusation. My ex was 6 years older than me. My friend said they weren't calling me a predator, just a creepy older guy hitting on teenagers. He agreed the singing was immature, but I should have left much earlier. I felt like he should have defended me. In the end, I wondered if I was wrong for defending myself or for approaching them at all. Later, I accepted that my pride had gotten in the way. I can't undo what happened, but next time, I'll do better. Update from the birthday girl. I never had an account on this forum before, but our journalism professor showed it to us, and sometimes I browse the front page. A few weeks ago, I came across a post that was clearly about my birthday dinner. At first, I didn't care, but after reading it, I felt the need to clarify a few things. This wasn't a club. It was a restaurant that happened to serve alcohol. Families were sitting nearby. We were just eating dinner and talking. He came over and wished me a happy birthday. I said thank you, and we went back to our conversation. The problem was that he didn't leave. We awkwardly laughed and kept talking amongst ourselves. He stayed. Every time he spoke, we nodded politely and turned away. We said thanks, have a good night, multiple times. He still stood there. His friend kept trying to leave. I was awkward and irritated, but I stayed polite. I even offered him a piece of cake to take with him and said goodbye again. He took the cake, sat down at our table, and said the night wasn't over yet. That's when my friend snapped. If she hadn't, I would have. When she called him R. Kelly, she wasn't accusing him of committing crimes. She was calling him creepy. Grown men in their 30s hitting on us feel creepy, period. We were polite the entire time. I gave him countless hints. His own friend was trying to escape, and then he had the nerve to argue with us instead of leaving. When he finally walked away, we started singing Ignition amongst ourselves and toward him. It's an old song our parents used to play. We turned a gross situation into a funny moment instead of letting it ruin my birthday. One more thing. When he asked our ages and announced his, it made everything worse. A 30-year-old man trying to flirt with 18 and 19-year-olds at a birthday dinner is uncomfortable. It always is. For those saying he wasn't ugly, that's irrelevant.
If I'd met him under different circumstances, I could have introduced him to my aunt, but he was too old for us and the situation was inappropriate. Being told you're legal is degrading. The entire interaction felt nauseating. When he asked our ages, it felt like he was checking IDs at a family restaurant. I'm done being polite to men who act entitled to our time and attention.
The client who demanded my personal number and blamed me for losing his job. I work as an insurance adjuster handling auto claims. One of my recent clients decided that his bad luck was entirely my fault. He filed a claim late in the evening after our office had closed, and I called him first thing the next morning. I had only the information he provided, nothing more. I warned him right away that his car might be considered a total loss, depending on the damage. He immediately exploded, shouting that he didn't want his car written off and that I was not allowed to move it anywhere for inspection. As I started to calmly explain alternative options, he began yelling, insulting me, and demanding that I just issue the payment. If only it were that simple, my job would be a lot easier. I explained that, under his insurance policy, we are required to inspect the vehicle before processing any payout to determine whether it's repairable or totaled. He kept arguing, so I told him I'd end the conversation and try again once he'd calmed down. I hung up and went to a meeting. Meanwhile, he started spamming our customer service line, calling over and over again, harassing at least 4 different agents, refusing to hang up until I personally answered. I told them I was in a meeting and wouldn't be available for about half an hour. He stayed on the line for several minutes, hung up, then called again. When I finally got the chance to return his call, I suggested we contact his auto repair shop and ask them to send us photos so we could make a preliminary assessment. He snapped that he'd already sent them last night. I explained there were no attachments in his email and that we needed specific photos to properly evaluate the damage. Then he said it was my job to call the shop and request the pictures, which, ironically, was exactly what I had just proposed. After that, he demanded my personal phone number. I told him I don't have a company cell phone. He insisted he needed to reach me over the weekend. I refused. He repeated the demand several times, then demanded to speak with my supervisor. I told him she was aware of the situation and would contact him when available, but that I couldn't share her private number. He ordered me to make her call right now. I reminded him she's my supervisor. I don't control her schedule. When he tried to keep me on the line until his demands were met, I told him there was nothing left to discuss and ended the call. Later, I phoned the repair shop and the employee there was rude as well, claiming I was interfering with a good man's job and wasting their time. I politely asked them to just send me the photos by email so we could move forward, and they promised to do it. My last name is rare and included in my email address, so I spelled it out several times. But 2 hours before the end of the workday, no photos had arrived. I emailed the client to let him know, and he said he'd call the shop himself. 5 minutes before closing, I tried the shop again. No answer, no voicemail option. I sent the client another message saying, "Photos still haven't been received, so your claim will resume processing on Monday." He responded by accusing me of working in a different time zone, saying it was unfair because I had 3 extra hours. I corrected him, it's just 1 hour, and pointed out the shop had the entire day to send the images. Then he announced that, since he didn't have rental coverage, he'd lose his job on Monday, and that would be my fault. Right, so his employer is so heartless they'd fire him over missing 1 single day. Maybe he should be talking to a state's labor department instead of me. He then circled back to demanding I just approve the claim, insisting I was deliberately delaying the process to make his life miserable. I wonder what he thinks happens to adjusters who ignore procedure and pay out claims illegally. Spoiler, we don't get cookies. We can actually be fired, fined by the state, or even prosecuted. The company could also sue us for wrongful payout. And if a client knowingly cashes a check for a claim that wasn't valid, they can be charged with insurance fraud.
We'll see what happens Monday. My supervisor has been reviewing my notes and listening to call recordings, and I suspect she's preparing for a very fun conversation with him, especially since every abusive call is recorded. Update 1. Nothing major yet, surprisingly. The client's gone silent, which honestly worries me more than constant shouting. My supervisor left him a voicemail yesterday, but he hasn't called back. She told me I did the right thing by switching him to written-only communication, and I don't have to answer his calls anymore. She also said that if he starts making threats, which seems entirely possible, she'll involve corporate security and help me file a report with his local police. Every call is recorded anyway. Today, I spoke with the shop owner about how unprofessional his employee had been on Friday. He admitted that the client had been harassing her non-stop on the phone, apparently because she'd made the mistake of giving her her personal number when he demanded it. Turns out, the owner is an old friend of that client. He freely shared that info, then added they're no longer friends after this repair, especially since that rude employee was his niece. He even said he'd blacklist the client permanently. Finally, I got the photos, detailed and numerous. The damage was actually minor. Clearly, he'd just hit some large metal object on the road that got wedged underneath the car. The shop even sent a photo of the bent part. And yes, you all were right, he had a large aftermarket accessory installed that wasn't covered by his policy. It's a custom roof on his pickup truck, but it wasn't damaged anyway. Even if it had been, we wouldn't cover it. His policy doesn't include custom equipment. I sent everything to our special investigations unit. While they agreed the client's behavior seemed suspicious, there wasn't enough evidence to open a full fraud case. And since it was a single vehicle accident, we're obligated to cover the repair, even if he wasn't entirely honest about what happened. Some states allow denial if a client lies about the cause, but unfortunately, not this one. I emailed him to confirm we'd received the photos and were coordinating with the shop. He never replied.
Total silence. Absolute silence. Either he's truly ashamed of his behavior, which would be the right reaction, or he's like a ticking time bomb, waiting until the end of the week when I'll be swamped with work so he can explode again and tell me how I cost him his job. We'll see. This will probably be my last update, but if anything else happens, I'll post again. Huge thanks to everyone who supported me. You helped me realize I'm not crazy or overly sensitive. And to those who say, it's your job, you're trained to handle this, let me be clear. First, no, nobody trains you to deal with this level of insanity. Second, my job is to fix cars, not to tolerate verbal abuse and unhinged tirades. Let this be a reminder to everyone, be kind to people, especially to the faceless voices on the phone who are just doing their jobs. Second update. Thank you all for the kind messages and support. A few people asked how it all ended, so here's what happened. The silence didn't last long. Turns out the client really was a walking time bomb. The repair shop sent me all the information I needed to finish the preliminary repair estimate. The shop owner explained they'd probably find more damage once they started working and would contact me for updates. He apologized again for his niece's behavior during my first call and said he's no longer friends with that client. Our special investigations team reviewed the case and concluded there wasn't enough evidence to call it fraud, so that was that. I emailed the client asking where he wanted the payment sent, directly to him or to the repair shop. He immediately demanded a call, claiming he disagreed with the estimate. Here's how auto insurance payments actually work. The company first creates a preliminary estimate based on visible damage. An initial payment is issued to start the repair process. The shop and insurer stay in touch. If more hidden damage is discovered, additional payments are made later. Simple enough, right? Not for this client. He started yelling that the shop's estimate was $7,000, but we were only paying $6,500. I explained that we're happy to work with the shop and pay more if new damage is found, but the insurance can only cover verified damage. I also mentioned that we keep policy prices fair by aligning payouts with shop estimates and avoiding unnecessary overpayment. He didn't let me finish. He screamed that I'd cost him his job and now was refusing to pay what the shop demanded. I clarified that no one was refusing payment, it was just the first installment, and I only needed to confirm where to send it. Then I warned him that if he kept talking to me like that, I'd end the call. His response? Of course you will. No hint of reflection, no apology, acting like a spoiled child, though he's almost 40. I tried to continue, but he kept shouting over me, saying disgusting things about me and my family. Finally, I said, "Do you really want to finish that sentence on a recorded line that dozens of people might hear later?" He paused for a second and then said, "I hope your husband rapes you and leaves you." Yes, he really said that. I'd recently gotten married, and IT was in the middle of changing my name in our systems, so some programs showed my maiden name and others my new one, meaning I had to explain it constantly. I'd even explained it to this client earlier, so he knew he was saying that to a newlywed woman. I admit, I lost my professional tone for a moment. I told him, "Sir, throughout this entire process, the only thing preventing your car from being fixed is you. The way you've treated me, my coworkers, and the shop employees is appalling. You should be ashamed of yourself. You haven't said a single kind word to me. Working with you has been an absolute nightmare. Now you're spewing vile comments about my personal life, even after I told you last Friday that it was none of your business when you demanded my personal number. And now you're insulting my husband, someone you've never met and know nothing about. My husband is a far better man than you'll ever be, even though he's half your age. At least he knows how to treat people with respect, even in tough situations. I genuinely pity your wife if she has to live with someone like you. At least my husband doesn't have to force me to sleep with him. The fact that your mind went there immediately says everything about you. Maybe try fixing your own home before meddling in other people's lives." He cursed at me a few more times, and I ended the call, because honestly, they don't pay me enough to take that kind of abuse. He called customer support again and made another representative cry. I took over the call once more and told him he was now restricted to written communication only. I wouldn't answer his calls again, only emails or messages. Then I hung up. I thought that was the end, but apparently he still had my supervisor's contact info from Monday and called her directly. She phoned me afterward and told me what happened. He claimed I'd accused him of sexually assaulting his wife just because he asked about the estimate I supposedly prepared, even though I don't do estimates at all. That's a different department. He said he only wanted to clarify next steps when I hung up. Thankfully, my manager had already listened to all our recorded calls and didn't believe a word he said. She put him on hold, pulled up the recording, listened again, and then tore into him for the things he said to me. When he tried to justify himself by saying I was rude, she shut him down immediately. She told me I'm one of the top specialists in the department with the highest customer satisfaction ratings. She'd seen me calmly handle incredibly difficult clients, and that he was the first person ever to make me lose my composure. Then she told him that from now on, his account would officially be limited to written communication only, something I had already requested with her earlier. She warned him that if she heard about one more case of him verbally abusing an employee, she'd escalate it as a harassment case. Unfortunately, we can't fire him as a client. He still pays us money, and upper management only cares about revenue, not what we go through. Hopefully, this pushes him to cancel his policy and become someone else's problem. I asked my supervisor if I'd face any disciplinary action for that call. She replied, "What call? I didn't hear any call, and I certainly couldn't delete a recording if it didn't exist," basically covering my back in case he tries to complain further. I sent the repair estimate to the shop with instructions on how to request additional payments if new damage is found. Then the client emailed me again asking me to send the payment directly to him. Apparently, he called the shop afterward and got into a screaming match with them too, because soon after he wrote, "Send me the money, the shop pissed me off." So I did, but made the check payable to both him and the lien holder, meaning he has to get it endorsed by the shop before cashing it. And of course, it's going by regular USPS mail, not express delivery. Finally, I closed the case. Still, I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over yet. If anything else happens, I'll let you know, but thankfully, I'll never have to speak to that man again. Once again, thank you all for the support.
A woman treats her husband like trash, cheats on him, divorces him, and only 6 months later begins to regret everything. If I could give anyone advice about divorce, it would be this: don't throw away your marriage over petty reasons. If your spouse is abusive, threatening you or your children, then yes, leave and never look back. But if not, think twice. In my case, there was no violence, no danger. We had been together for 8 years, and most of that time was genuinely good. We shared 4 children together. About 5 years into our marriage, I got a big promotion at work. That's when things started to shift. Suddenly, it felt like my husband was holding me back. I began to see him as an anchor, weighing down my potential for a better life. We had never been wealthy, and when my salary surpassed his, my resentment grew. I worked longer hours while his schedule became shorter. He spent more time at home with the kids, and instead of appreciating that, I despised him for it. I'd come home to dishes not washed, meals not cooked, or the kids already in bed, and I would explode. He promised to do better, but I never saw his efforts as enough. Over the years, the gap between us widened. The more he stayed home, the more I criticized him for not bringing in money. When he offered to take extra shifts, I snapped at him because it meant less help with the kids. No matter what he did, I always made him feel wrong. Deep down, I wanted him to hurt. And then, I met another man at work. At first, it was harmless, just chatting, laughing during breaks. Then it became texts, photos, videos, and eventually meeting alone. I knew it was wrong, but it made me feel alive. My husband hadn't made me feel that way in years. One night, I came home to find he had cleaned the entire house, cooked dinner for the family, and even set up a movie night. A few years ago, that would have melted my heart. But that night, I couldn't even look at him. I pretended I was sick and went to bed. He doted on me all evening, bringing me food, checking my temperature. Instead of softening me, it made me furious. I was texting the other man before the night was over. After that, nothing he did was enough. I picked fights, pushed him to the breaking point, waited for him to snap. He never did. Instead, after every fight, he apologized, even when he had done nothing wrong. I, on the other hand, never apologized. I made sure he felt smaller, weaker, undeserving. When he eventually discovered my affair, I acted cold, like it didn't matter. Inside, it tore me apart, but I refused to show it. I saw his face break, saw him struggle not to cry, and in that moment, instead of compassion, I told him I wanted a divorce. It was like I could hear his heart ripping in half. He begged, pleaded, said we could work through it. But I didn't care. I ended things with the other man, not out of guilt, but because I knew I could always go back if I wanted to. Meanwhile, I kept tormenting my husband with constant criticism, never letting him breathe. I convinced myself I was right, that the whole internet was on my side, validating my anger. Eventually, I met with a lawyer. A couple of weeks later, I filed for divorce. The process was simple. He didn't fight me on money, on custody, on anything. The only thing he asked, the only thing was for me not to go through with it, to give our marriage another chance. And I still left. I didn't care at the time. He was broken, but I felt free. Free to do whatever I wanted, without guilt, without accountability. For a moment, it was intoxicating, that feeling of freedom, but it didn't last. Within the first month after he moved out, reality hit me hard. I forgot trash day 3 times in a row. Dirty dishes piled up in the sink, laundry sat untouched for so long, I started sniff testing clothes to see if they were wearable. And my kids, I had never seen them so unhappy. My oldest daughter had seen some of the messages I exchanged with the other man months before, and she knew her father still wanted to fix our marriage. She stopped talking to me, except to ask when she could visit her dad. The younger ones, too, said they'd rather live with him. I tried to buy their happiness, toys, games, little distractions, but their joy lasted minutes at best. They wanted their father. Work became another battlefield. Alone, I couldn't keep up with the extra hours that had once made me feel powerful. I caved and began calling my ex, asking him to watch the kids. Every single time he showed up, he'd clean the dishes, do the laundry, sometimes even cook dinner. When I came back, he rarely spoke to me. Just a quiet, "Call me if you need something." And then he'd leave, always looking so heartbreakingly sad. A couple of months later, friends pushed me to go on a date, dinner and a movie. I thought maybe it would be a new beginning. But halfway through dinner, guilt crashed down on me like a tidal wave. It was unbearable. I skipped the movie, went home, and cried for days. That's how I ended up on a therapist's couch. I poured everything out, from the promotion at work to the divorce papers. The therapist listened and then told me plainly, I wasn't right. The justifications I'd clung to, the support I found online, all of it, lies I used to excuse myself. I kept going back, 2, sometimes 3 times a week. I argued, I tried to prove I had been right all along. But the more I spoke, the more the truth became undeniable. I was the one who destroyed us. My flaws, my cruelty, my pride, they outweighed everything. I had said and done things so vile, even I wouldn't want to live with me. Yet he had. He wanted to. I'll never forget the day he begged me in front of the lawyer not to go through with the divorce. He was still fighting for us, even as I was signing our life away. And then I bragged about it online like it was some kind of victory. I was so wrong. Just a few weeks ago, after he had come by to help with the kids, I walked him out and asked if he'd ever consider coming back. He looked at me, tears filling his eyes, and said he didn't know if he could. The pain had been too long, too deep. He admitted that what hurt him most wasn't the cheating or even the divorce itself, but the way I sighed of relief the moment the papers were signed. He thought his love was enough before it was too late, but I didn't. And now, he doesn't know if he'll ever be able to trust me again. I can't blame him. Looking back, he was a wonderful husband, and I destroyed him. I robbed my children of the amazing father they had. I thought I was chasing happiness, freedom. Instead, I'm spending my freedom either alone at home or sobbing in therapy sessions. Please, if you're reading this, don't romanticize divorce just because the internet makes it sound liberating. Before you give up on your marriage, take a hard look at yourself. Ask if there's something you can change. That goes for both men and women. Divorce doesn't guarantee happiness. Freedom doesn't guarantee peace. And watching your husband and children suffer because of your choices, that's the deepest pain I've ever known.
Told my dad's friend exactly what I think of him. I told my father's longtime friend, a man who's treated me like a child my entire life, that I hate him. Years ago, my dad met a man named Harold through mutual friends, and they hit it off immediately. I was 18 at the time, a college student, and we were never close. Still, for some reason, Harold considered himself a family friend and always talked down to me like I was 5. Every time I saw him, I tried to convince myself he wasn't that bad, and every time, he proved me wrong within a minute. He didn't respect boundaries and loved to remind me I was just a kid. Whenever I joined a conversation, he'd mock me, my studies, my hobbies, anything, just to get a reaction. And when he saw he'd annoyed me, he'd grin and say, half jokingly, "Do you hate me yet?" I'd always reply, "No, but only because of Dad." The final straw came when I was 20.
We were having a barbecue, and out of nowhere, Harold interrupted everyone to say, "You know, I actually like you, even though you're such a rude, arrogant girl." I'd been quiet the whole day, doing some homework while helping out, polite and calm every time someone spoke to me. Even if I hadn't been, that comment was completely out of line. After that, I started avoiding every family gathering where he might show up. Fast forward to yesterday, my dad's girlfriend was having a small birthday dinner at Dad's apartment. I came with my fiancé and our 6-month-old son, and of course, Harold was there. I hadn't seen him in years, but he talked to me exactly the same way, like I was some clueless teenager. Except now I'm 26, engaged, and a mother. Throughout the party, he kept offering advice that I was too young to marry, too young to raise a baby. Thankfully, most of the guests disagreed with him. My son slept through most of the afternoon, and when he woke up hungry, I went to feed him in my old bedroom. There's still a crib there. When I came back, I heard Harold joking about how long I'd been gone, making disgusting comments about me barely keeping up as a mom. Then he interrupted a conversation I was having with one of Dad's friends to start interrogating me about motherhood, like it was his business, and made more comments about my age. The moment he asked if I'd ever considered putting my baby up for adoption, I realized I was done. I grabbed my son, told my fiancé we were leaving, and said goodbye to everyone, except Harold. As we were heading for the door, he followed us, asking, "Why are you leaving?" I tried to brush him off, but he kept pressing. Finally, like he always did, he laughed and said, "Come on, do you hate me or something?" And this time, I looked him in the eye and said, "Yes, I do. Can we go now?" He just stood there speechless as we walked out. On the drive home, my fiancé told me he was proud of me. The next morning, my dad called and said the exact opposite, that I'd been rude, that I'd made things awkward. We argued a bit before deciding to drop it. I know this isn't over, but if it continues, it won't be because of me. It wasn't my proudest moment, and part of me regrets saying it out loud, but I'm done letting that man humiliate me. Edit. Wow, there are a lot of comments here, so I'll answer a few common ones. No, I don't think Harold is secretly in love with me. His behavior has always been patronizing and dismissive, not flirty. And for the record, no, he didn't tell me to give up my son. He asked me if I'd thought about it when I first got pregnant. Still an awful question, especially since he cut off another woman who was also pregnant just to say it. I don't like drama. When someone makes me uncomfortable, I leave. When I don't like a person, I avoid them. It's easier that way. My dad and I argued until I told him exactly what Harold said about adoption. That finally shut him up, though I don't think he fully understood that this wasn't the only reason I left. It was just the last straw. I don't expect my dad to stop being friends with Harold. He's an adult and can make his own choices. I never told him I hated Harold before because I didn't think I needed to. He's Dad's friend, not mine. I've been distancing myself from that man since I was 20. I've seen him maybe twice in 6 years. My fiancé didn't hear the comments. He was across the room, but I told him everything in the car, and he's completely on my side. Before we move to the update, I'll throw the question to you all. Do you think I was right to finally tell Harold I hated him? Personally, I think I was. He'd pushed me for years, waiting for that reaction, and I finally gave it to him. There's a big difference between teasing a teenager and insulting a grown woman who's a mother. Some people need to learn that line.
Update 1. Hey everyone. I honestly didn't plan to write an update, but I had a bit of time, so here we are. Let's start with the biggest theory, that Harold has a crush on me. I really don't think that's true. His comments have always been annoying and condescending, but never sexual. Though I'll admit, some of your replies made me a bit uneasy. Even if I regretted my words at first, I never once doubted that standing up to him was the right thing to do. I think the regret came from realizing that 8 years of keeping the peace had finally ended. It took a bit of time to feel the relief, but it came. Honestly, I wanted to tell him off ever since that barbecue years ago. That's when he went from annoying to insufferable. The day after I posted, my dad called Harold. Apparently, Harold tried to spin everything, said the adoption comment came from a place of concern, that he just worried I became a mom too young and didn't know what I was doing. He even apologized to my dad,
Yeah, right. I don't buy it for a second. The next day, Dad called me and said I should forgive Harold because it was all a misunderstanding. He even suggested I apologize for overreacting and saying I hated him over something so small. Thing is, Harold made plenty of demeaning comments right in front of my dad, usually when others were around, so Dad just never noticed. He tends to ignore anything that doesn't directly affect or anger him. So no, I don't expect him to suddenly understand. For him, nothing Harold said was that bad. For me, it was years of disrespect. I told my father I hadn't exaggerated when I said I hated Harold, and that his comment about adoption wasn't the only reason. I listed nearly every humiliating thing he'd ever said or done, including what happened at the party. He didn't remember any of it. I made it very clear that I despised Harold long before that day and had nothing to apologize for. Then I told him that I wouldn't attend any event where Harold would be present. My father didn't have to stop being friends with him or inviting him over, but he needed to understand that he couldn't count on me being there. I said I'd always ask in advance who was invited, and if he lied, I'd simply leave. Dad said I was overreacting, but I reminded him that I had been avoiding Harold for 6 years, and no one even noticed, so clearly it wasn't a problem for anyone. Since that barbecue incident, I'd only seen him twice, once at lunch last week and another time when I was pregnant. Clearly, my father's life hadn't fallen apart without me socializing with his friend. I told him I wasn't obligated to like his friends, just like he wasn't required to like mine. We argued a bit, but in the end, he agreed to my terms. Yesterday, while we were talking about something unrelated, he casually mentioned that Harold was upset. I ignored it. I'm not planning to cut contact with my father completely. I know there were moments over the past few years when I was close to doing it, but ultimately I realized it wouldn't change much. Our relationship actually became easier once I moved out. Now we only see each other a couple of times a month. It still annoys him that I rarely call or text, but at least he stopped complaining. There's no point in cutting off someone who no longer has control over your life. It's better to remember what they did wrong while raising you and make sure not to repeat their mistakes with your own child. Though honestly, my father's been walking on thin ice for a long time. I don't let him stay alone with my son. I don't trust him for more than an hour. When I got pregnant, I began encouraging him to start therapy. And finally, this June, he did. His attitude toward me and my younger sister, who splits her time between our divorced parents, has genuinely improved since then. I made it clear that if he quits therapy, I won't let him see his grandson. For the first time ever, my dad actually seems to be changing for the better. It's hard to stay optimistic, but I'm trying. And if I ever decide to go no contact, it definitely won't be because of damn Harold. That's about it, really. I'm relieved that I don't have to pretend anymore. Things with my father are still tense, but I'm not dwelling on it. My main priorities are my son, my fiancé, and my work, and that's not going to change anytime soon.
Update 2. Last week, my fiancé, our baby, and I spent a few days visiting my cousin. On the day we arrived, we went with her to pick up her daughter, my little cousin, I'll just call her my niece, from school. When we got there, she was chatting with a boy. She saw us, gave him a friendly goodbye hug, oh the horror, and ran over to us. We talked for a bit, and then she immediately focused on my son, completely smitten. She grabbed my fiancé's hand and dragged him off to show our baby to our classmates while I waited with my cousin. A few minutes later, someone called out my cousin's name. It was the boy's mother. She walked over, pointed at my cousin, and snapped, "You need to teach your daughter some manners. She shouldn't be talking to my son, let alone hugging him. They're far too young for that." Then she turned around and left without waiting for a reply. For reference, both kids are 5. All he did was compliment her Shrek Crocs. Update 3. I checked someone's essay for grammar, and now that person blames me for getting a failing grade. Since high school, I've occasionally proofread friends' papers, mostly fixing grammar and making small tweaks. One friend didn't even understand what paragraphs were until college. I'm no professional, but I've always been decent enough that people kept recommending me. I graduated in 2019, I don't teach, don't study anymore, and don't charge money, I just do it for fun, though lately not so often. I have a job, a husband, and a baby, and most of my friends finished school years ago. One of the few exceptions was a close friend who recently decided to get a second degree. Last week's class had to submit a big written project, and he recommended me to a classmate. Let's call him Derek. He's 18 and sounded normal on the phone, though in hindsight I think he was probably high. He promised to send his paper at least 24 hours before the deadline so I could check it for grammar. Instead, he sent it at 1 a.m. the day it was due at 7:30 a.m. I was annoyed, but decided to keep my word. It was 3 pages long, and I immediately realized that at least half of it had been written by ChatGPT. Badly. The facts were wrong. It even mixed up 2 completely different people, which ruined the entire section. But since it was 1 a.m., and the grammar in that part was fine, I focused only on fixing the truly awful mistakes in the rest. I sent it back within an hour. He didn't even thank me. Yesterday, Derek got his grade, 2 out of 10. His professor apparently said that was generous. Derek's reaction, he texted me, "What the hell did you do? You were supposed to fix everything." I reminded him that I only correct grammar, not factual errors. Both I and our mutual friend had told him that multiple times. He kept arguing that I should have rewritten the wrong parts since I noticed them. So basically, this guy submitted a half AI written paper and now blames me for his failure. Judging by his messages, he actually expected me to rewrite chunks of the essay for him. The audacity. I get it. Being a student is hard. I've been there. But I would never treat someone who's helping me for free like that. Honestly, I'm seriously considering never proofreading anyone's work again. Update 4. A quick one, but it's about Harold. Hi, everyone. Can't believe it's been over a year since my last update. I meant to write sooner, but life has been hectic. Raising a toddler, getting married, working like crazy, and binge-watching Supernatural. So yeah, I've been busy. Avoiding Harold openly has worked beautifully. My father respects my boundaries. Every time he invites my husband and I for dinner, I ask who else will be there, and if Harold's on the list, he tells me honestly. He's never lied, and he doesn't insist if I say I'm not coming. Since then, I've only seen Harold once, at my father's birthday party a couple of months ago. Yes, I knew he'd be there. My dad promised to tell him not to talk to me. Plus, there were going to be kids there, children of my dad's friends, some of whom I used to babysit. I love those kids more than I hate Harold. So I went. I spent most of the evening with my son and the kids. Harold didn't speak to me once, so I guess my father kept his word, though I did notice Harold glance at us a few times, and my husband caught him too, and my husband, the calmest man alive, somehow managed to look intimidating in return. God, I love that man. But guess who did talk to me? Harold's new girlfriend. Yep, he's dating someone now. We crossed paths twice. First, when she came over to coo over my son and told me he needed a haircut, instant dislike. Later, she came back and said, "You're shy, aren't you?" I said, "No." She laughed and added, "Oh, yes, you are." She said it in that sing-song tone people use with 6-year-olds. I barely kept a straight face, otherwise I might have told her that I just preferred hanging out with kids who were far better company than her and her insufferable boyfriend. Honestly, they're perfect for each other. Not much else to add. My dad broke up with the woman he was dating last year, long story, and now he has a new girlfriend. She's not annoying or crazy, and honestly, I like her. Still, I'd bet their relationship won't last more than a year. Things with my dad aren't perfect, but they're better. He actually apologizes now. Maybe it's therapy working. Or maybe motherhood just made me terrifying. Either way, I'm not complaining. And I have to admit, he's turned out to be a great grandpa. I'm genuinely happy my father continues to respect my boundaries regarding Harold. I don't need that man in my life at all. Right now, I'm content. My son's happy and healthy. Part of me misses when he was tiny, but I'm prouder of him every single day. Watching your child grow into himself, it's just the best feeling in the world.
My wife cheated on me with her gym trainer, and when she asked for a divorce, she demanded half of everything we owned. What she didn't know was that our house and all our savings were legally registered under my father's name. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. I'm 35, and I've been working as an accountant at a local firm for almost a decade. I like to think of myself as a practical, level-headed guy. Maybe that's why I'm managing to stay calm through all this.
My wife, Katie, is 33. We'd been together for about 5 years, married for 2, no kids, and honestly, looking back now, that might have been a blessing. After the wedding, she stopped working. She used to be in marketing, but said she wanted a break to focus on us. I didn't argue. I earned enough to support both of us and assumed it was temporary. We had a house, a comfortable amount of savings, nothing extravagant, but a stable, normal life. Then, gradually, something changed. Katie grew distant, she stayed out longer with friends or at the gym, avoided affection, got irritated whenever I asked what was wrong. At first, I chalked it up to stress, but the feeling that something was off kept growing, and unfortunately, I was right. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen without thinking. A message from someone named Derek. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby." I opened the chat. The messages were explicit, romantic, full of plans that didn't include me. She had been seeing him for months. I just stared at the screen, numb. This was the woman I trusted, the person I built a life with. But instead of anger, all I felt was emptiness. Maybe shock? Maybe my rational side kicking in. When Katie came out of the bathroom, I handed her the phone and calmly asked her to explain. She tried to brush it off at first. "It's just a joke, it's nothing serious." But when I read a few messages aloud, she realized lying was pointless. And then, without hesitation, she said, "I want a divorce." No apology, no tears, no guilt. Just cold, matter of fact. She admitted she'd been seeing Derek for a while and wasn't happy in our marriage anymore. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She was leaving for him. But what stunned me wasn't even the affair. It was what she said next. She wanted half of everything we owned. She even claimed she deserved it because she gave up her career for our relationship. Her entitlement was unbelievable, but I stayed calm, not because I'm some saint, but because I knew something she didn't. I agreed to the divorce, told her I wouldn't fight it. She looked shocked, probably expecting shouting or some dramatic meltdown, but I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. Here's what Katie never knew. Almost everything we owned was legally registered under my father's name. Years ago, when I first started earning good money, my dad suggested registering major assets like the house and most of my investments under him. He said it would protect me if anything ever went wrong, debts, lawsuits, or, well, exactly this. I didn't think much of it then. It just seemed like smart financial planning. So when Katie tried to demand half of our estate, she had no idea that legally I owned almost nothing. My car, a modest bank account, and a few personal items. That was it. The house belonged to my father. Most of the savings were on his accounts, too. To avoid a messy legal fight, I suggested mediation. She agreed, convinced she'd walk away with a small fortune. She had no clue that everything had been arranged years before she even met me. When the divorce process started, I told my dad everything. He wasn't thrilled, but he understood. We spoke with a lawyer to make sure all paperwork was solid, and it was flawless. Katie could demand all she wanted, but there was nothing for her to take. She went in expecting half a house and a pile of savings. She came out realizing I barely owned anything at all.
She wasted no time hiring an aggressive attorney, the kind of shark who promises to tear everything out of the other party. I hired a calm but experienced lawyer who specialized in cases with complicated financial structures. I didn't want a dramatic courtroom battle, but I also wasn't going to let Katie and her lawyer pressure me. The first step of the divorce was financial disclosure, and as you can probably guess, that did not go the way Katie expected. I provided all the documents the law required, but once she saw how little was actually in my name, her attorney stopped smirking. They both looked confused, maybe even suspicious, but they couldn't argue with the paperwork. Everything I submitted was true. There were no hidden accounts or secret assets. Katie snapped right there in the meeting, shouting that I was lying, calling me names. But I had shown everything I legally owned. After a few minutes of her screaming, I simply stood up and told her we could continue once she calmed down. And now I'm here, unsure whether I did the right thing. I agreed to give her half of everything, knowing she wouldn't get anywhere close to what she imagined. Update 1. Things begin to escalate. Right after the asset disclosure, Katie completely lost her composure. She was convinced I was hiding something. Her attorney wasn't much better. The look on their faces when they saw the tiny numbers next to my name was priceless. Within days, they demanded a deeper investigation. Katie kept repeating, "Where's the money? The house, the investments, everything we built?" She truly believed I had some giant stash of assets hidden somewhere. Her attorney hired a forensic accountant to dig through every transaction. I was a little nervous, not because I was guilty of anything, but because I knew this would drag the divorce out even longer. After talking with my attorney and reviewing all documents again, it became clear they weren't going to find anything. Everything I submitted was 100% accurate. There wasn't a single trail that could lead back to the assets under my father's name. As the investigation continued, Katie became more irritated and desperate. She was used to getting what she wanted, and this time there was nothing to take. The realization that she'd walk away with almost nothing was unbearable for her. Her next move was to claim she had made a significant contribution to my career and our lifestyle. She insisted that by staying home and managing the house, I gave her the freedom to focus on work and succeed. Sure, sometimes her help made daily life easier, but I'm not the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I'm a mid-level accountant. My income has been steady for years. There was no magical rise she could take credit for. But she kept pushing the narrative that she sacrificed her marketing career for me, even though she worked only briefly and quit by her own choice. Her attorney brought this up again and again, trying to frame me as someone who exploited her sacrifice. But there was no evidence to support that claim.
At one point, they even tried dragging my parents into the process. Katie wanted to prove that they had secretly given me money or helped me hide assets. And that was the moment I finally lost my patience. My parents had nothing to do with any of this, and involving them was a cheap, disgusting move. Thankfully, my lawyer shut that down immediately, but it showed just how desperate Katie had become. As the divorce dragged on, she switched to a different tactic. If she couldn't get what she wanted in court, she'd try to ruin my reputation instead. She began telling everyone in our social circle that I had been hiding money from her for years, that I was financially abusive. I couldn't believe the lies she was spreading. Mutual friends told me she constantly complained that I was leaving her with nothing and had deceived her into thinking we had more than we actually did. She even went on social media, posting vague but obvious jabs about narcissist and betrayal. Some people sided with her. There are always those who automatically believe whoever cries the loudest. But most of our real friends knew the truth. They understood I wasn't capable of what she accused me of. Watching her drag my name through the mud just because things didn't go her way was painful. But I tried not to let it get to me. I knew the truth, and so did the people who mattered. Meanwhile, I focused on protecting myself. My lawyer and I stayed in constant communication, collecting every message, every demand, every attempt she made to twist the story. If things went to court, I wanted everything documented. I also gathered proof of her affair with Derek. Screenshots, their photos together, even statements from a couple of her friends who knew about the cheating. I didn't want to humiliate her, I just wanted the truth to be clear. On top of that, I prepared for what I knew was coming. Once it became obvious she wouldn't be getting half of everything, the real ugliness would begin. I kept my distance, focused on work, and handled the legal side quietly and carefully. Meanwhile, Derek's attitude started changing too. When Katie first told him she wanted to leave me for him, he seemed enthusiastic. They had some fantasy about starting a new life together. But as soon as the divorce turned into a nightmare, Derek began pulling away. Apparently, he wasn't as in love as she thought. From what I heard, he panicked when he realized being with her meant dealing with her financial mess. Rumors started spreading that he was losing clients at the gym because of the scandal. Nobody wants a trainer who sleeps with married women. He's now avoiding her, and she's finally beginning to realize this wasn't a fairy tale, but a delusion. Sometimes I almost feel sorry for her. Then I remember everything she did, and the sympathy disappears. I have mixed emotions. On one hand, yes, I'm relieved. I protected my money, and she's not walking away with what she expected. On the other hand, it's sad. This was still my marriage. I once loved her and believed we had a future. Watching it fall apart hurts, even if I know this outcome is for the best. Update 2. Things get even crazier. Since my last update, everything spiraled even further. Katie is in full-blown panic mode, and it's showing in the worst ways. She finally accepted that she won't get the payout she was counting on. So now she's trying to turn my life into hell. Her latest stunt is threatening to destroy my career. She told me outright that if I didn't be more generous, she would make sure everyone in my office found out what a monster I supposedly am. At first, I wasn't even sure what she meant until she started showing up at my office unannounced. The first time, she pretended she just wanted to talk. But when I made it clear there was nothing left to discuss, she snapped, raising her voice, saying things like, "I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are." Luckily, I managed to get her out before it turned into a full-blown scene, but it's obvious she's becoming unpredictable. Back at her parents' house, where she's living now, things aren't great either. From what I heard, they support her, but they're not thrilled with the situation. Once she realized she wasn't getting the jackpot she imagined, she moved in with them, and apparently tensions there are growing too.
At this point, even her own parents seem to be realizing that her victim act is nothing more than a performance. Mutual friends told me she's been snapping at everyone, fighting with her family, and acting like she's on the verge of a breakdown. The legal side of everything has also become more chaotic. Katie's lawyer is desperately trying to dig up anything they can use against me. They even filed a motion to subpoena my parents and demand their financial records, despite my attorney repeatedly explaining that my parents' assets have nothing to do with this divorce. It's obvious they're trying to rattle me, but it isn't working. Her legal team has also requested statements from my coworkers, hoping to find hidden income or under-the-table payments. They're grabbing at straws, but they keep coming up empty. Every time we shut down one of their requests, another one pops up. The whole thing feels like an endless chess match. They try to counter every move I make, but so far I've managed to stay one step ahead thanks to my attorney, and thanks to the financial safeguards my father put in place years ago. Still, it's exhausting, and I'm not sure how much longer I can deal with this before the case finally goes to trial. As for mediation, we've attempted it twice, and both times were disasters. The first session lasted maybe 20 minutes. Katie refused to back down from demanding half the house and half the savings. My lawyer calmly stated the facts. The house is legally in my father's name, and the savings aren't remotely what she imagines. She didn't want to hear it. She stormed out, accused everyone of lying, and claimed the mediator was biased. The second attempt wasn't any better. This time she arrived with an absurd list of demands: full ownership of the house, half of all assets, which barely exist, and alimony for at least 5 years. When my attorney explained, again, that none of this was legally justified, she lost control completely. She screamed that she gave up everything for me and that I was abandoning her with nothing. I sat there trying to stay composed, but inside I was boiling. She was the one who cheated, the one who walked away, and yet she paints me as the villain who destroyed her life? After that meeting, it became obvious. This divorce would only end in court. Meanwhile, Katie has been borrowing money from family and friends to keep paying her attorney. Clearly, she didn't expect the divorce to drag on this long, and now she's running out of resources. I honestly don't know how she plans to keep funding her overly aggressive lawyer, but that's no longer my problem. The more desperate she gets, the more unstable her behavior becomes. Friends told me she barely leaves the house and constantly complains to anyone who will listen that I've ruined her life. Even her own friends are starting to distance themselves. They're tired of the endless drama and the way she keeps replaying the victim narrative. It's clear that everything she hoped to gain from this divorce is slipping through her fingers. All the while, I'm doing my best to stay calm and strategic. Every accusation she throws at me, I counter with documentation. Every financial record they request, I provide. I have nothing to hide. My lawyer makes sure we follow the law down to the last detail, something I can't say for Katie's side. I've also been protecting my parents' privacy as much as possible. Her attempts to drag them into this mess make my blood boil, but thankfully there are legal safeguards that prevent her from getting access to their financial documents. The fact that she even tried shows just how desperate she's become. She seems convinced that if she digs deep enough, she'll uncover some secret fortune. There is nothing to find. Update 3. The day of the hearing finally arrived, and the tension in the courtroom was intense. Katie testified first. She immediately went on the offensive, insisting I had been hiding assets for years. She accused me of manipulating our finances, keeping money in secret accounts, and lying about our actual income. She played up the emotion, painting herself as someone who had been left with nothing after sacrificing her career for mine. At one point, she even cried on the stand, talking about how much she trusted me. But everything changed when my attorney presented the evidence of her affair with Derek. As soon as the messages, photos, and timeline of their relationship were revealed, everyone, the judge, the jury, and even the people in the back, understood the truth. The sympathetic victim image she tried to build collapsed instantly. She tried to brush it off, saying it was a mistake and irrelevant to the divorce. But it was too late. Her credibility was gone, and it became obvious that her financial demands were driven purely by greed. When it was my turn to testify, I stayed calm and stuck strictly to the facts.
My attorney had prepared me well, so I knew that any emotional outburst or attempt to justify myself would only hurt the case. I calmly explained how my assets had been placed under my father's ownership years before, how I fully disclosed every financial detail, and how I tried to resolve everything amicably through mediation. I also described her threats, her unstable behavior, and the smear campaign she had been running against me. My lawyer presented documentation refuting each of her accusations, both the legal claims and the lies she spread publicly, proving that none of it had any real foundation. We laid everything out clearly. The house belongs to my father, our savings are modest, and there is no secret stash of money she could claim a share of. The judge seemed to appreciate my composure and straightforwardness. I didn't try to paint Katie as a villain, but I also didn't sugarcoat anything. The facts spoke for themselves. Several key witnesses testified, and their statements finally put everything in its proper place. My father testified first. He explained the financial arrangement we put in place years ago, how the house is legally in his name, how the investments are under his control, and that everything was structured for long-term financial protection. He made it clear those assets are his, not mine, and that Katie has no legal claim to them. Next, one of my coworkers testified. Katie's legal team tried to suggest I'd been getting under-the-table payments or hidden bonuses, but he shut that down immediately. He confirmed that I earn a standard salary and have no secret income. His testimony was crucial, proving her accusations were baseless. The judge saw that there was no conspiracy, just a straightforward, transparent financial structure that Katie never bothered to understand. After several days of testimony and legal arguments, the judge finally delivered the ruling. Hearing that the decision was in my favor felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. Katie's demands for half the house and half our savings were completely denied. The judge ruled that since the house and most of the assets belonged to my father, Katie has no right to them. The only thing she was awarded was minimal, short-term alimony, barely enough to cover a fraction of her legal fees, let alone the lifestyle she imagined. He also specifically noted that her affair and her lack of contribution to our finances influenced the decision. He saw right through her attempts to play the victim and issued a fair verdict. When he finished reading the decision, I felt an enormous sense of relief. Months of stress, constant accusations, the fear of losing everything, all of it vanished in an instant.
Legally, I was finally free. Katie, on the other hand, didn't take the ruling well. The moment the judge concluded, she burst into tears, yelling that the system was unfair and that I had stolen what she deserved. She ran out of the courtroom, leaving her lawyer looking stunned. I'm not sure what she expected, but it was obvious she wasn't ready for a loss. As for me, I felt only relief. I thanked my attorney, who did an incredible job, and walked out of the courthouse. My phone was exploding with messages, friends and family congratulating me. The news spread quickly, and soon everyone in our community knew how the case ended. It felt good knowing the truth had finally come out, and I could start moving on. But Katie didn't stop. Right outside the courthouse, she caused another scene in front of a small crowd, shouting that I manipulated the system and that she would appeal. The problem is, she has no money for an appeal. Her attorney had already hinted that her funds were gone, and now, from what I've heard, she's still borrowing from relatives and friends just to stay afloat. I'm endlessly grateful to my father for his foresight. I can't even imagine the mess I'd be in without his planning. And I'm grateful to my family, friends, and colleagues who didn't abandon me when she tried to destroy my reputation. Now, for the first time in a long while, I'm looking toward the future with hope. I know it will take time to recover, emotionally and financially, but I'm ready to rebuild. This whole experience taught me a lot, and I won't make the same mistakes again. Right now, all I want is to return to a normal life and finally enjoy some peace.
I tricked my cheating wife into believing that I was the one having an affair, then vanished like a nuclear ghost ninja and handed her the divorce papers on Christmas Day. Here's the full story. It spans from late 2019, and all names are changed. My wife had been the love of my life since high school. We started dating in 1992. Both of us were 17. Now we're 45, and all those years we never separated. She was the only woman I'd ever been with. We got married at 22, right after college, and a year later, our first son was born. I gave her 23 years of my life, built our home, worked myself to exhaustion to give her the life she dreamed of. Of course, we had rough patches, but what couple doesn't? Even the hardest moments made us stronger. That's why discovering her affair felt like getting hit by a truck. In March 2020, I first sensed something was wrong. 2 months before that, we already weren't in a good place. I was recovering from ACL reconstruction. I tore the ligament in fall 2019 and still barely had 55% mobility. That slowed down everything at home. I was on injury leave from my job, couldn't handle many household responsibilities, and the things only I could do had to be pushed onto her. She wasn't happy about it. And our intimacy, which had already decreased before the injury, basically disappeared completely. Around that time, my wife, let's call her Sue, started spending more time with coworkers after work. From November 2019 to March 2020, it became a regular thing. I never questioned it. In 23 years of marriage, she never gave me a single reason to doubt her. She had her friends, I had mine, we had shared friends too. It was never a problem. But sometime in January 2020, things changed. She became distant. Yes, we were struggling, but she had never avoided affectionate touches before. Her hugs, small kisses, even simple closeness, gone. Her phone, which she used constantly anyway, stopped being something she shared with me. Before, she'd show me Pinterest crafts or funny memes. Now she hid the screen, angled it away, held it tighter. Her tone toward me became sharper, like I irritated her just by existing. Then March 2020 hit. The pandemic began, New York shut down. Our jobs were classified as essential, so we kept working. I had just been cleared to return to work after 5 months of rehab, and I was desperate to get back. Months stuck at home, unable to exercise, was torture for someone who trains martial arts and goes to the gym 4 times a week. A week or two into lockdown, my wife said she'd need to stay late at work. I didn't think much of it. With her job, it seemed plausible. But she started staying late every single day. Not an hour or two, 3 hours or more. She'd come home, head straight to the shower, spend a little time with me, a little time with our 17-year-old son, our older one, 22, lived with his girlfriend, and go to bed. As my knee improved, we resumed intimacy, but she was completely absent, emotionally gone, mentally somewhere else. I noticed immediately. By early April, everything aligned. All the signs pointed to an affair. I needed answers. I researched what to look for, read lists of typical cheating behaviors. She hit nearly every point. Then I dug deeper, looking for actual proof. I started with her social media. Her Facebook looked normal, pictures of us, the kids, friends, and several photos of her after-work hangouts. Some people I recognized, others I didn't. But one guy stood out. He appeared in many photos, always too close to my wife. Hand on her shoulder, hand on her waist. Too familiar for someone I'd never met. He was friends with her on Facebook and followed her on Instagram. So I checked his profile. He had blocked me. A man I didn't know had blocked me, yet was connected to my wife. That was the moment I knew something was seriously wrong. No more denial. She was cheating, and this guy was the one. I needed to know how long it had been going on, so I kept digging all through April and May. We had a shared family mobile plan, so I could access call logs. 2 numbers dominated her call history from October 2019 to April 2020, mine and an unknown number. A quick Google search confirmed it was him, the same guy from the photos. Let's call him Mark, though I had other names in mind. The picture grew clearer. Many messages were deleted, which meant she was hiding things. I knew she was cheating, but I still lacked hard evidence. So I kept going.
At that point, I knew I needed real evidence. I told my best friend Ozzy about everything I had discovered. He asked if I had confronted her, but I said no, it didn't feel like enough. Then he told me about an app I could install to monitor her messages in real time. I set it up, synced it to our shared phone plan, and waited. Within a few days, I finally saw the proof. Messages between them about how much fun they had the night before and how excited they were to do it again over the weekend. It was like getting punched in the gut. Shocked doesn't even begin to describe it. For the next 2 days, I was completely destroyed. I avoided her on purpose, which she definitely noticed. She tried comforting me and asked what was wrong, but I brushed her off. I couldn't even look at her, the woman I had given 23 years of my life to, the woman I had given everything and more, and she cheated on me with someone only 5 years older than our eldest son. On the 3rd day, I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. I called Ozzy to tell him my suspicions were confirmed. He asked if I had talked to her yet. I told him no, because I wanted revenge. I didn't just want to divorce her. I wanted to destroy her. I wanted her life to fall apart. I wanted her to feel everything she had made me feel. That would take time, so I made a plan. While researching infidelity, I ran across a quote that stuck with me. The enemy of an affair is unpredictability, or something like that. That became the foundation of my plan. I was going to make her life hell, while secretly preparing my own escape. By early June, I still had the app installed. Almost every night, I collected as much information as I could, watching their conversations. They acted like they were in a full-blown relationship, sexting, romantic messages, sending each other nudes, the whole package. At some point, I stopped reading everything and just archived it all on my private server. Meanwhile, I started doing unusual things. I began leaving the house at weird times. I came home later than she did. When she saw me on my phone and asked what I was doing, I would say, just stuff, and put the phone away. I changed all my account passwords so she couldn't access anything. For context, throughout our entire marriage, we never hid anything from each other.
But from the moment her affair began, she changed her Facebook and phone passwords, claiming she had security issues. Perfect excuse for hiding an affair. I told Ozzy about my plan and also confided in my older sister and two closest friends, Joey and Nina. These were people I trusted with my life. They swore to keep it secret. Ozzy and I have been friends since childhood, Joey and Nina since high school. Pay attention to Nina, she becomes important later. By July, my wife had become completely paranoid. She started texting and calling me much more often, constantly asking where I was and what I was doing. I saw that the seed of doubt I planted months earlier had finally started to grow. It was especially obvious in her conversations with her lover. She told him she felt confused and worried, said I was becoming cold and distant. The audacity. She suggested they stop meeting at our house because she never knew when I might come home now, which confirmed it. She had been bringing him into our home. Thanks, Sue. In one conversation, the guy asked if she was worried that I might be cheating on her. That made her angry, and I cannot explain to you how much joy and laughter that conversation brought me. My cheating wife arguing with her affair partner about whether she should be upset that her husband might be cheating on her. The irony was delicious. For the record, I never cheated on her. When I left the house, I was usually at Ozzy's or Joey's. We hung out, had drinks, watched fights. Sometimes I was at my sister's with her husband. She's 52, he's 58, like an older brother to me. She told him about my wife's affair, but didn't mention my plan. He tends to gossip, and I couldn't risk it. Jump to October, when things got serious. I had been running my fake affair routine for 3 months. Sue clearly saw I was pulling away. From the day I started my plan until the day she confronted me, October 20th, 2020, I hadn't touched her once. No hugs, no kisses, no sex. Nothing. Not that she needed it. She was still sleeping with the guy at his place or in motels. That day, she called me at work and asked me to come home right after my shift, saying we needed to talk. I won't lie, part of me thought she might confess. Of course she didn't. Instead, I came home and she asked me if I was unhappy with her. The nerve. She pointed out that I spent too much time away, didn't show affection anymore, and that our sex life had disappeared. She said she worried I was pushing her away because of how she treated me during my knee recovery. Then she asked the funniest question of my life. She asked if I was cheating on her. I collapsed on the floor laughing, a Joker-style laugh. From her perspective, it looked like I was laughing at the idea of being unfaithful. In reality, I was laughing at the absurdity of the situation. I laughed until tears came, rolled around for about 5 minutes before I finally calmed down. Then I sat up, looked her in the eyes for the first time in months, shook my head without answering, kissed the top of her head, and walked away. Later that night, I opened the app to see what she was telling her affair partner. No surprise, they were texting. She wrote, "I know he's cheating on me. I asked him today and he just laughed in my face. He fell on the floor and rolled around for like 5 minutes. He doesn't care about my feelings anymore. I know I lost him. This is karma." The grin on my face must have looked like the Cheshire Cat. She was breaking down. The guy tried comforting her, saying that if he truly loved her, she wouldn't have needed him, and that I hadn't been giving her what she needed. But her tone said everything. She was full of doubt. The sheer audacity. She cheated on me because I couldn't fulfill my duties as a husband due to a real injury, and yet she continued the affair without a second thought.
Almost the whole idea that she might lose me because of another woman shook her to the core. What a coward. During this time, I was also working hard on the second phase of my plan. I was putting my finances in order. Back in September, I met with a family law attorney and started the divorce process, armed with a mountain of evidence I'd collected. In New York, divorces can be filed as fault-based or no fault, and with the amount of proof I had, a fault-based divorce was practically guaranteed to corner her legally. My lawyer advised me to organize all financial documents in preparation for splitting our assets. I went further. I secretly withdrew all the money from our joint account and transferred it into my personal one. I also began looking for an apartment as part of Phase 2. By November, I didn't just maintain my cold behavior, I amplified it. This is where my friend Nina comes into the story. For context, Nina and Sue had never been close. I met Nina in my first year of high school, 2 years before I even knew Sue. From the moment Sue and I started dating, she viewed Nina as a threat because Nina was my closest female friend. Sue never said it directly, but anyone around us could see she didn't trust Nina, and Nina, for her part, was never a big fan of Sue. Early in my relationship with Sue, Nina pointed out how Sue kept inserting herself into our friend group while I never did that with her friends. Nina knew exactly why Sue acted that way: jealousy. While Sue's entire friend circle consisted only of women, besides her affair partner, of course, Nina remained the only woman in my circle of friends. Nina had been stuck abroad for a while due to the pandemic, but she finally returned to New York on November 3rd. Ozzy, Joey, his wife, who was also Nina's sister, Nina, and I decided to celebrate her return with drinks and dinner at Joey's place. Being the clever fox she is, Nina came up with a devilish idea: recreate a few photos in the same style as the ones I'd seen of Sue and her affair partner months ago and post them on my Facebook page. So we did exactly that. On November 5th, Sue found out. I guess some mutual friends saw the pictures and noticed how close Nina and I looked. It completely rattled Sue. She still firmly believed I was cheating on her, and she probably wanted to accuse Nina, but she couldn't since Nina had spent almost the entire year in Europe. That didn't stop Sue from confronting me that night, upset that, in her words, I was being too affectionate in those photos. And that gave me the perfect opportunity to land the first blow. I told her, "How about those photos of you and that guy from last year? He looked pretty affectionate too, and I didn't lose my mind over it." She froze. That was the first time I'd ever mentioned the affair partner by name. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head as she scrambled for an excuse. Up until then, she didn't even know I had seen the photos. That's how rarely I use Facebook. She eventually muttered something like, "He's like that with everyone. He's just friendly. I know how it looks, but nothing happened between us. I'm sorry if the photos upset you. I'll delete them." "No," I said. "The photos aren't the problem. The problem is that you slept with him for an entire year while lying to me about working late and meeting friends. That's what upset me." From that night on, she became unbelievably clingy, overly affectionate, constantly trying to hold me, kiss me, touch me. It was annoying. I ignored her every chance I got. Meanwhile, I kept archiving her messages with the affair partner. By that point, I was completely numb. Any desire to save our marriage had died the day I launched Phase 1 of my plan. She texted him that things had gotten worse, that she didn't know what to do, and that she felt like I hated her. And I did. Deeply. And then came the turning point. She told him she couldn't see him anymore. The guilt was crushing her. She felt like karma was suffocating her and she couldn't risk losing me. She claimed she deeply loved him, but was still in love with me and needed to save her marriage. "No, sweetheart, you were about 8 months too late." The guy freaked out, begging her not to leave him. He insisted I didn't love her like he did, that she was making a mistake and that she couldn't just throw away what they had. Throughout November and December, Sue was stuck in limbo. She desperately tried to figure out what I was thinking, but she still couldn't determine whether I was cheating or not. Meanwhile, the affair partner kept bombarding her with messages every day. She just ignored them. I noticed her checking her phone constantly, then quickly hiding it. By then, Phase 2 of my plan was complete. Divorce papers ready, a studio apartment in the Bronx leased for 2 years, and all our money sitting safely in my personal account. I was ready to strike. Then came Thanksgiving. My older son and his girlfriend hosted a small dinner for close family. It was me, Sue, our younger son, her parents, and the girlfriend's parents. The food was incredible. The girl is studying culinary arts and cooked everything herself. To maintain the appearance that Sue and I were fine, I showed her a bit of affection that evening. A kiss on the cheek, a gentle hug, my arm around her shoulders. She was thrilled. It was the first time I had touched her in almost 2 months since that night in October when she confronted me. I won't lie, it made my skin crawl, but I had to keep up appearances. Pulling away in front of our sons and their guests would have raised questions. Our younger son stayed the night with his brother, and Sue and I went home. On the way, she thanked me for being so kind and said, "I don't know what's going on with you lately, honey, but I'm here." I just had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. I simply said, "I know. I just need some time." That night, for the first time since spring, we slept together. I thought, screw it. Why not enjoy myself one last time before I erase her from my life? I won't go into detail, but it wasn't making love. When I finished, she lay there staring at the ceiling like she'd just been hit by a truck. No cuddling, no tenderness, nothing.
After it was over, I simply got up, took a shower, and went to sleep in my office. What unsettled her most was the fact that I used a condom for the first time in 20 damn years. She was clearly confused, but she didn't ask questions. And of course, I wasn't about to sleep with her unprotected after knowing she'd been doing exactly that with her lover for months. The next morning, I woke up and immediately checked the tracking app. For the first time in weeks, she had replied to him. The guy completely poured his heart out, confessed his love, told her she was wasting her time trying to reignite a dead flame with me, claimed she had been trapped in a cage for 23 years and deserved a man who truly valued her. And remember, this guy is only 5 years older than our son. She was ready to destroy our marriage and the home we built for him. She responded almost exactly as she had before. Told him she loved him, enjoyed their time together, but couldn't lose me. Said I was still the love of her life, though he would always have a place in her heart. She suggested staying friends if he wanted, but their physical relationship had to end. He begged her to meet one more time, and of course, she agreed to one last goodbye. Who am I to judge? I'd done the same with her the night before. Naturally, I added all of this to the archive I'd been building. On December 4th, the third and final phase of my plan began. I already had the divorce documents in hand and my new apartment secured. The next step was to start quietly moving my belongings out. But first, I had to tell our sons. On Friday evening, I asked my oldest to come home. I took both boys into my office and told them, without going into graphic detail, that their mother had been cheating on me for over a year and that I would soon be filing for divorce. My younger son took it especially hard. He'd just gone through his own heartbreak 4 months earlier when his first girlfriend cheated on him. Watching his heart break again because his own mother could do something like this, it was brutal. My older son handled it more calmly. He offered to let his brother stay with him until things settled down, and I agreed. We packed my younger son's things, and before leaving, he asked if I would be okay. I told him, "Yes, son, I'll be fine, and you will be too. We'll get through this, I promise." They left, and the hardest part was behind me. Now it was time to arm the nuclear payload. When my older son was at work, I used the spare key he had given me to start taking a few things, items Sue wouldn't notice missing right away. I also bought a new phone, a new number, and sent the updated contacts to the people who needed them: Ozzy, Joey, Nina, my sons, my sister, and my mother. Meanwhile, Sue was left in the dark. She kept minimal contact with her lover, but the emotional bond was still there. All the while, I continued gathering data: every message, every call log, every picture, every recording. I printed everything. I must have spent over $1,500 on printer cartridges, folders, labels, boxes, the whole setup. I organized everything chronologically from the beginning of their affair to their most recent exchange. By December 16th, it filled 14 folders. I boxed them up, wrapped them like Christmas presents, and addressed them to my mother, her parents,
her two sisters, her brother, her HR department. Oh right, he worked at the same company, which had strict rules about coworker relationships. Several of her friends, the lover's parents, and the lover himself. I shipped the entire collection on December 16th. Estimated arrival, December 22 to 24. Perfect timing. Then came Christmas Eve. Sue got home at the usual time. No idea whether she had seen her lover. I'd stopped checking the app after the 18th. She showered, spent a little time with me on the couch, then went to bed. The final stage was approaching. The bomb I'd been assembling since June was ready to explode. In the middle of the night, I woke up, took one of the remaining folders, wrapped it like a gift, and slid the divorce papers into the inside cover, and left it on my side of the bed with a note that said, "Merry Christmas." Next to it, I left my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I packed the last essentials into 2 backpacks and walked out of the house I'd lived in for 23 years. That was 1 week ago. To Sue, I've completely vanished. She's blocked on Facebook, but oddly, she hasn't blocked me, so I can still watch everything unfold. It's glorious. All the packages arrived. Sue is getting absolutely torn apart. Her younger sister went off on her. Her parents are furious. My mom annihilated her. I knew my mother could be harsh, but what she said to Sue was downright savage. Sue is desperately trying to find out where I am, but the people who know aren't saying a word. Her Facebook is full of posts begging me to contact her. She must know I can see it, but I won't respond to anything without my lawyer present. She has no way to twist this to make me the villain. And according to our mutual friend, who works at the same company, both she and her affair partner are being put on unpaid leave starting tomorrow. So she will probably begin 2021 unemployed. As for the remaining 2 folders, one went to my attorney as final evidence, and I kept the last one to burn at Joey's place once the divorce is finalized. Do I feel guilty? Not even a little. For 23 years, I was loyal to this woman. I gave her the home she dreamed of, the family she wanted, the life I thought we both deserved. I loved her unconditionally. I never betrayed her, never even considered breaking my vows. Whenever something felt off in our marriage, I talked with her. We solved problems as best we could. She chose the comfort of another man's bed instead of coming to me and saying she was unhappy with our intimacy. The moment she crawled into bed with that younger guy, she ended our marriage. So no, I feel zero remorse. Let her burn in hell for all I care. The worst I can lose is the house, the car, and maybe a couple $100s a month. But since this is a fault-based divorce in New York and my evidence is overwhelming, I likely won't be paying alimony at all.
Update 1. Christmas. Christmas was the first full day I spent in my new apartment. I'm still getting the place set up. There are a few things I want to buy, but overall, it already feels like home. I'll be living here for at least the next 2 years. My sons and my older son's girlfriend came over and spent most of the day with me. She brought homemade sweets and cooked a great dinner. I finally had the chance to talk with my boys calmly, something I hadn't done in a long time, and it felt good. My older sister stopped by too, bringing more food and spent a few hours with us. It was the first time in almost a year she saw her nephews. Having them all around kept me stable emotionally. If I'd been alone, I probably would have just gotten drunk until I blacked out. Everyone left around 8 p.m., and afterward I decided to visit Joey and his wife Claudia. I stayed with them for a couple of hours, had a drink, then went home. The next important moment came on December 29th, 2020. Around midday, I got a message from Nina asking if I was free that evening. Of course I was. We agreed to meet after work. She drove over, and we went to a small diner near my office in New York. Restaurants were still running at 25% capacity because of the pandemic, but it wasn't hard to find a table since most people preferred staying home. Once we ordered, Nina laid everything out. I already suspected what she was going to say.
She admitted she'd like me since we were teenagers, but never had the chance to say anything because Sue got to me before she ever could. For context, I've known Nina 2 years longer than I've known Sue. Back in school, it was the four of us, me, Ozzy, Joey, and Nina. We were the misfits who didn't fit anywhere. Nina struggled with her weight then, was diabetic, and looked like a goth girl straight out of a comic book. Cool, but invisible to guys. Yet we always had chemistry. Now, Nina is a personal trainer and yoga instructor. She went from awkward outsider to, honestly, a stunning woman. So we agreed that once my divorce is finalized, we'll start officially dating. And yes, we slept together that night. She came back to my new place, and we had an amazing time. Do I feel guilty? Not even close. Nina has been a better friend to me than Sue was for almost 25 years. She supported me through everything, and I learned that she even stepped aside back then so I could build a life with Sue. That level of selflessness hit me hard. Maybe it sounds like I'm justifying myself, but to me it felt right, and I want to see where things go with Nina. Now about yesterday, the day I met with my wife and her attorney to discuss the divorce. 2 weeks had passed since I vanished from Sue's life. On Monday, I got a call from her lawyer's office saying they'd scheduled a meeting for January 6th, 2021. The day before the meeting, I met with my attorney to go over my terms. In short, I want a divorce on the grounds of adultery, a full split of marital assets, I sell her my share of the house, she can keep it, we each keep our cars, I keep my cabin in Pennsylvania. Because of her cheating, she gets no spousal support. Our younger son chooses where he lives, and it'll probably be with me. Then came Wednesday. I walked into my lawyer's office dressed like Johnny Cash. Inside were Sue and her attorney. She looked terrible, completely worn down. I kept a stone-cold face. I won't bore you with the legal back and forth. Her lawyer offered reconciliation terms. I rejected them almost instantly. Eventually, we settled on a separation agreement that will lead to a no-fault divorce. The only change, I'll pay her $653 a month temporarily to cover utilities until she finds a job. Yes, she was fired for her affair, just like the guy she cheated with. My income is high enough that the payment won't hurt me, even if she drags her job search out, and she has enough savings to survive for a while. After a year, she's on her own. Honestly, that's a small price to finally remove her from my life. The divorce should take around 3 months, so by early April, I'll be free. After the meeting, I stepped outside. Sue followed me and asked to talk. I allowed it. She held herself together in the office, but once we were outside, she completely broke down, full meltdown. She apologized over and over, saying she never wanted things to end this way. She said she didn't expect to fall for that guy, but when she thought I'd been cheating on her, she panicked and betrayed me. She asked if I could ever forgive her, and maybe years from now we could try again, because she can't imagine living without me. I told her she'd better start imagining it, because this was the last time she would ever see me or hear my voice. I reminded her that our younger son is old enough to choose his own path. I told her she had half my life and every ounce of love I had, and she threw it away for a fling. I said there was zero chance of forgiveness. Every bit of love I had for her died during the months she whispered, "I love you," to another man instead of telling me our marriage needed help. I told her I loved the woman she used to be, but I hated the person standing in front of me now. She was sobbing on a Manhattan sidewalk, making a scene. People stared, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to humiliate her. I'd already destroyed her social and professional life. I just needed to say what I came to say. Then I put in my earbuds, turned around, and walked away. Later that night, her father called me to apologize. He said he was ashamed of her behavior and thanked me for being a good husband. I'll miss the man. He was like a father to me after my own dad died, but there's no point staying connected to her family now. After the call, I updated my Facebook status to divorced. Yes, it's not legally final yet, but emotionally it's over. People started messaging me right away, and I told them the truth. I filed for divorce because of infidelity. Nina called me immediately, surprised how fast things were moving. She didn't realize how far along everything already was. I asked her to come over, and she did. We slept together again, but this time she stayed the night. We talked until morning, and I haven't felt that kind of connection in years. Nina understands me. I can't get enough of her presence. Some might say I'm moving on too fast. Maybe. But my marriage ended the moment she let another man touch her. I've been emotionally done for a long time. So that's where I am. My divorce is underway. I'm starting something new with Nina. And despite saying once I'd never remarry, that was before Nina told me how she felt, and I can't deny I feel the same. We're taking it slow, and we won't go public until everything with Sue is legally finalized. As for Sue, I don't care what happens to her. She can keep the old house, move her boyfriend in, do whatever. I'll get my half of the money throughout 2021, 4 payments, and I'll never have to see her again. To everyone who's offered support and encouragement, thank you. It means more than you know.
Update 2. My wife almost died yesterday. Last night, something happened that I honestly never expected. Since only my closest friends, my sons, my older sister, and my mother have my new contact information, and since I blocked my wife everywhere, she hasn't had any way to reach me since I disappeared from her life on Christmas Eve. Some of our mutual friends, however, can still contact me. I was in my apartment when I got a message from one of the few mutual friends who didn't turn his back on her after I exposed the affair. When I replied, he told me that he had stopped by to check on her and found her unconscious in the bedroom, foam at her mouth with 2 empty pill bottles nearby. She's now in the ICU in critical but stable condition. Doctors said she will most likely survive, but she won't be all right for a long time. That friend begged me to come. Her parents and sisters were also at the hospital. I'm guessing they were called because the hospital couldn't reach me due to my old number still being listed as her emergency contact. I simply said no. She is no longer my responsibility. She chose the easy way out instead of facing the consequences of the pain and humiliation she brought on herself by destroying our 23-year marriage. My friend insisted I tell my sons. I did, but made it clear that if they wanted to visit their mother, I wouldn't judge. She is still their mom. But I'm done. They were surprised by how firm I was, but they accepted it. Now that the news has spread, many of the same people who condemned her weeks ago are suddenly full of sympathy, telling me I should be by her side, that despite everything she did, I should support her through this. I was also told her affair partner tried to visit her this morning, but he wasn't allowed in because he isn't family. So now the pressure is on me, but I feel nothing for this woman anymore. Whatever love I had for her died months ago, during the time she was telling another man she loved him. Her actions killed every last emotion I had left. She betrayed me. She chose nearly a year-long affair with someone only 5 years older than our son, over our entire life together. And now, instead of dealing with the fallout of her choices, she takes the most selfish route possible. Even now, when she will likely survive, she instantly becomes the victim again. People who condemned her are already forgiving her. Meanwhile, I'm going to be painted as the cold, heartless ex-husband who refused to show up. Her father called me. He apologized, said he respected my decision, and admitted he raised her better. He's the only one who hasn't tried to guilt-trip me. I keep asking myself whether she did this because she truly broke mentally or because she made a calculated, desperate move to win people back. Maybe that sounds cruel, but I honestly don't know this woman anymore. To be clear, I will not go see her. She lost the right to my concern the day she let another man put his hands on her. I know some of you will judge me. I don't care. If you were in my position, you'd see things differently. Some might argue that I caused her breakdown by leaving the way I did, by letting her believe I was cheating on her while she was actively cheating on me.
Maybe that contributed, but it doesn't erase her choices. I gave her half my life. She betrayed me entirely for her own selfish reasons. She told me herself I had nothing to do with her decision to cheat. She did it because she wanted to. If refusing to visit her in the hospital makes me a bad person, then so be it. I'm choosing myself now. My responsibility for her ended the day we signed the separation agreement. After 23 years and 2 kids, I realized I never truly knew her. I feel no sympathy. I never will. She can rot in whatever dark pit she's dug for herself. I'm done. Quick update. Her father told me she has been transferred from the ICU to the psychiatric ward. She's conscious and mentally stable enough to speak, but still extremely weak. He also told me she asked whether I came to see her, and when he said no, she looked devastated. He said he'll give me updates only if I ask, out of respect for my boundaries. I also arranged a therapy appointment for my 17-year-old son. His first session is this Monday. Update 3. The End and Goodbye. Update 3. The End and Goodbye. On April 13th, exactly 1 month ago, Sue officially became my ex-wife. At first, my lawyer told me it would happen on the 18th, but partly because New York started loosening COVID restrictions, everything was finalized a few days earlier. My lawyer Jeff called me on April 12th and asked me to come in the next day. When I arrived, he handed me the notice confirming the completion of the divorce and shook my hand. I couldn't just walk away, so I hugged him and thanked him for everything he had done for me. On the way home, I kept replaying the last 24 years of my life in my head, every memory, every chapter of our story. When I walked into my apartment, it finally hit me. I collapsed onto the floor, and all the emotions I had been holding inside poured out. I hadn't cried like that in years, but these weren't tears of sadness, not at all. My soul finally felt free after being trapped in the deepest, darkest pit. That evening, I called my older son. I briefly told him everything was finalized, that his mother and I were no longer married. He asked how I felt. I think he could hear in my voice that I had been crying, and I told him I was okay. Then my 17-year-old took the phone, and we talked for almost an hour and a half. My older son and his fiancée are taking great care of him, and he, like me, continues seeing a therapist. I won't go into details, but he still has a lot of work ahead of him, especially regarding how he views relationships. Later that night, Nina came over. I told her the news, and she just wrapped her arms around my waist and held me while I cried again. When I calmed down, she told me that no matter what happens, she will never betray me and will love me with all her heart. I know she meant every word. Some may judge me, but I don't regret the life I built with Sue, despite everything she did. She gave me 2 wonderful sons. But now it's clear I chose the wrong woman. Over the past 4.5 months, Nina has given me so much and asked nothing in return. All she wants is for me to be in her life. After the divorce was finalized, a few unexpected things happened. For example, AK contacted me. Turns out he saw this story after it blew up online and immediately recognized himself in it. The first thing he did was apologize. He told me what happened after his mother received the folder I mailed her. She essentially disowned him. His mother, a deeply devout Catholic who goes to church 3 times a week, went ballistic when she learned her son destroyed a marriage that lasted almost 25 years. She kicked him out that same day, and within a week, when his employer received the folder as well, he was fired. Since then, he's been sleeping on friends' couches and trying to find work. I admit I could have completely destroyed this guy, but I didn't. I asked when he last spoke to Sue. He said months ago. The last time they talked, Sue told him to forget about her and move on. At least on that, she didn't lie. He kept answering my questions, surprisingly honestly. Maybe he was looking for some kind of redemption. Much of what he said matched what I already suspected. The conversation lasted around 20 minutes. He apologized again. I told him this, I'm copying it directly from our messages. You're a 27-year-old man who now has to live knowing your own mother hates you for destroying a marriage almost as old as you are. I know you messaged me because your conscience is eating you alive, but I'm not here to comfort you. When I was 27, I was building a future. You are homeless, jobless, a homewrecker. If you're smart, you'll learn from this. If not, you'll stay a failure until you reach my age, if you even make it that far. I'd wish you luck, but you don't need luck. You need to rebuild your life. Then I ended the conversation and blocked him. It wasn't what he expected, and I could have been crueler, but I think those words will stay with him for a long time. Another important event, as of May 4th, 2021, Nina now carries my last name. For the past 2 months, we talked a lot about where we want our relationship to go. Nina made it clear she won't be with anyone but me and wants to take my name. She wants to be my wife, and she wants me to adopt her daughter, let's call her Anna, as my own. I adore this little girl. She just turned 6 months last month, and she absolutely loves me. I'm the first father figure in her life. Her biological father abandoned them when she was 4. Nina never introduced Anna to any man she dated after her divorce, unless he had long-term potential. Clearly, I do, and I have experience raising kids. By the way, Anna and my younger son get along incredibly well. Their sibling-like bond is sweet and heartwarming. My therapist said this is definitely a good sign. So last Monday, we went to City Hall and made it official. It took 24 hours to get the marriage certificate. Telling everyone was funny. My buddy Ozzy said, "Who would have guessed?" My older sister said, "I'm taking bets on when the baby announcement is coming." We thought we were keeping the relationship a secret, but apparently everyone already figured it out. Yes, some will say we married too quickly. And yes, I said in comments that I'd never get married again. But that was before Nina confessed her feelings to me. She told me through tears of happiness that she never thought she'd have a chance to be with me. She described in detail how she had felt about me for the past 25 years and how, even while married, she regretted that Sue had won. I had no idea how deeply this ran for her. She even admitted she had moments where the thought of an affair crossed her mind, but she refused to become a homewrecker. And through all those years, she gave me so much and asked so little in return. Even the woman I married and had 2 kids with never showed me the kind of love Nina has given me. I'd be a fool not to give her my last name. Now she has it, and we're in the early stages of the adoption process for Anna. As for Sue, I haven't spoken to her since the last time I was in our house almost 4 months ago, but mutual friends occasionally update me. One of them, a realtor, told me he sold the house and he gave her a job as an administrative assistant at his firm. Because of that, he canceled the alimony I was obligated to pay her while she was unemployed. She now lives in a small apartment near the office. He helped her find that too. She's only a shadow of the woman she used to be. She's barely gained any weight back, keeps to herself, goes to work, does her tasks, and talks to no one except that friend. Probably because, as you know, her workplace friendships are what led to everything in the first place. I last heard about her in late March. I thanked the friend for looking after her, but told him I no longer need updates. She's no longer my responsibility. I'm sure she already knows about Nina and I, since some mutual friends have commented on it. And since my youngest will be an adult in a year, I have no reason to ever speak to her again. And I won't. That's it. My story is over. I sincerely thank everyone who wished me well.
My son stole his late mother's ring to propose to his girlfriend, and now he's refusing to speak to me because I made him give it back. I'm 46. My son Jake is 23. He was a good kid growing up, which is why what he did hit me like a punch to the gut. I also have a daughter, Amber, who's 16. When my wife died during the pandemic, she already had a will in place.
She had been immunocompromised for nearly a decade, so she'd prepared everything early. In her will, she split her estate between the kids. Jake got his share immediately because he was already an adult. He used that money as a down payment on his condo. He also received his mother's car. But every single piece of her jewelry was left to Amber. Among those pieces was a vintage gold ring with a diamond in the center and pale blue sapphires on each side. It had been in my wife's family for generations. Her grandfather, a jeweler, made it by hand for her grandmother. When her grandmother passed, it went to her mother and eventually to my wife. After her death, it was meant to go to Amber, exactly as the will stated. Losing my wife broke me, but I held it together for the kids. They were my anchor. That's why my son's betrayal feels like a rusty knife between my ribs. Jake has been dating a girl named Sarah for about 8 months. She's the type who loves jewelry, big, flashy, and a lot of it. One day Jake told her about the heirloom pieces his mother left behind, the ones meant for Amber. And Sarah apparently became obsessed with seeing them. So Jake went into my bedroom when no one was home and showed them to her. He later admitted that to me. I was angry, but I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week ago, Jake came to me practically begging to give him that ring, the heirloom, so he could propose. He said Sarah fell in love with it the moment she saw it, and that he was convinced it was the perfect engagement ring. He seemed certain I would be thrilled that he was planning to propose, but I told him this wasn't up to me. The ring belonged to Amber, and I wasn't going to allow him to pressure her into giving it up. I told him he could ask her once, politely, and if she said no, the conversation was over forever. Jake agreed. He asked Amber in front of me. She immediately refused. She wanted to keep the ring in the family. She adored it and always had. To her, it was priceless. The idea of giving it away devastated her. I told Jake that was that, and he needed to drop it. He left upset, but I assumed he'd accept the answer and start looking for a similar ring. But then a few days later, he showed up again while I was at work to talk to Amber again. It escalated into a huge fight. Amber called me sobbing. I phoned Jake and told him to leave my house immediately and stay away from his sister. He yelled that he had as much right to the ring as she does because my wife was also his mother. I reminded him he already received a substantial inheritance. Money, the car, and the jewelry was specifically left to Amber. End of story. He hung up. Amber later texted that he stormed out furious. But then, before I could even get home from work that day, Amber called again, yelling that Jake had come back, gone into my room, taken something, and left without saying a word. When she tried to stop him, he shoved her aside. I rushed home and checked the jewelry box. The ring was gone. I called Jake repeatedly, no answer. I finally texted him and said I would contact the police if he didn't bring the ring back immediately. And even if he'd already proposed, it didn't matter. The ring wasn't his to give. That finally got his attention. He called me crying, saying I couldn't do that because he was my son. I said, "Watch me." He stole the ring, he assaulted his sister, he crossed a line I could not and would not ignore. He called back shortly after and confessed he had already taken Sarah to a restaurant and proposed. The ring had been in his possession for less than an hour, and she was already wearing it. I told him that wasn't my problem. He stole it, and he needed to return it. Whether that ruined his proposal wasn't my concern. I said I would get the ring back one way or another, even if it required a police report and a lawyer. He sobbed, begging me not to destroy his life. I told him he destroyed his own life when he stole from his sister and from his dead mother. The ring needed to be back in our hands by morning, or I would start legal proceedings. The next morning, he actually showed up with his girlfriend. They tried to guilt trip me. Turns out she knew the ring was stolen and still wanted to keep it because she fell in love with it instantly. I told her she could get a jeweler to make a replica if she wanted it that badly, but the original wasn't hers and never would be. Jake begged again, but Amber and I stood firm. Return the ring, or we're going to the police. Sarah ripped the ring off her finger and threw it at Amber, calling me a vicious bastard before running out of the house in tears. Jake yelled that I probably ruined his relationship. I told him he ruined it himself the moment he decided stealing from his family was acceptable. What kind of son steals from his sister and his dead mother? It's sick. He had nothing left to say and stormed out after her. I haven't involved anyone in this mess, but Jake has. He tried to rally friends and relatives to his side, and instead got the opposite. Everyone tore into him for what he did. I've received messages and calls from people supporting me and Amber. A week has passed and Jake still refuses to speak to me. I sent him detailed photos of the ring in case he wants to have a replica made.
But making an identical copy turned out to be extremely expensive unless they used imitation stones. Jake still hasn't replied to my last message. I have no idea what's happening between him and his girlfriend now, or whether they're still together after everything that happened. But even now, I'm certain he had no right to keep that ring. After this whole disaster, I moved all of my late wife's jewelry to a secure safety deposit box that only I can access. It will stay there until Amber turns 21, maybe even longer, depending on what she wants. I won't risk anything like this happening again. I know I made the right decision by getting the ring back, but that doesn't mean it's easy. I don't want my son to resent me forever, and I don't want our family to turn on him. If anyone has advice on how to fix this situation without returning the ring or spending a fortune on a replica, I'm open to hearing it. Update 1. Well, Sarah officially broke up with Jake. He's devastated and blames me for everything. Some people have already pointed out that I might have overrated my son by calling him a good kid. Maybe he used to be. The person he's become lately is a stranger to me. Whether he always had these traits or whether he just fell under the influence of the wrong woman, I honestly don't know. But it doesn't excuse what he did. After I forced them to return the ring, Sarah supposedly spent several days crying in bed. Then she told Jake she didn't want any other ring. She wanted my wife's ring and couldn't imagine an engagement without it now that she'd worn it, even for just a few hours. Jake tried to get sympathy from everyone, friends, relatives, even Sarah's family, and it completely backfired. Word spread fast, and local drama lovers clung to the story like sharks smelling blood. I didn't even ask for updates, but people kept messaging me anyway, so I knew everything that was going on, even though neither Jake nor Sarah would talk to me. Jake still had the photos of the ring I sent him in case he wanted a duplicate made. He took them to a jeweler. The jeweler said he could try to create a replica from images, but he'd need to examine the original to take proper measurements, estimate the materials, and see the stones up close. Jake hesitated for a while. Then, swallowing his pride, he called again. Sarah was now willing to consider a replica, but only if it was perfect down to the smallest detail. A few days after my first post, they asked me to bring the ring to the jeweler so he could give an exact price estimate. I agreed and took a long lunch break to meet them. I retrieved the ring from the safety deposit box and kept it in my sight the entire time. When Sarah saw it again, her eyes lit up with pure greed. She reached her hand out, asking to just hold it for a minute. I told her no, I wasn't going to risk her running off with it. The jeweler examined it carefully. He said the ring was far more valuable than we had assumed. It was handcrafted by my wife's grandfather in the 1940s, with a large diamond in the center and light blue sapphires on the sides. The band was thick 18-karat gold, and the stones were set in platinum. There were delicate floral engravings all around the ring. Just the gemstones for a replica would cost more than Jake had in savings. The labor alone, entirely by hand, would be extremely expensive. The final price was 5 times more than Jake had ever saved in his life. At best, he could put down a deposit and spend years paying the debt off. Jake was willing to consider cheaper alternatives, including using imitation stones or modern materials. The jeweler even showed us 3 modern rings with similar designs at a reasonable price. But suddenly, Sarah slapped Jake across the face, called him a pathetic broke loser, then turned to me and called me a spiteful bastard again for stealing her ring. She insisted the original belonged to her because Jake used it to propose. She even held out her hand, expecting someone to slide it onto her finger again, and demanded I give it back, claiming Amber didn't really need it. She said, "Your wife's family ring is not going to serve her anyway. She's not even going to propose to anyone. Someone can just buy her another ring someday." That was the moment I lost my temper. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her the truth. My wife's family ring will never be hers. Jake had no right to give it to her, which is why he stole it behind my back. Neither of them ever had any claim to it. I told her that people like her, who think they're entitled to anything they want, are exactly what's wrong with the world. She raised her hand as if to hit me too, but the look on my face must have stopped her. She spun around, screamed something intelligible loud enough to make my ears ring, and stormed out, knocking over a display case on purpose on her way out. Jake stared at me with pure rage, but didn't say a word until I asked why he was even dating someone like her. All he said was that he loved her, then went after her. A few days later, Sarah ended things for good, telling Jake he didn't appreciate her since he couldn't get her the ring she deserved. She also said she couldn't imagine having a father-in-law like me.
She felt utterly humiliated because of me and cried, convinced that everyone now saw her as a gold digger. Honestly, I don't think people were that far off. She slapped my son just because he suggested a cheaper replica of a ring he couldn't afford, and then threw a full-blown tantrum when I wouldn't hand over the original ring the moment she demanded it. That is gold digger behavior. Maybe it's just my opinion, but I doubt Sarah would have stayed with my son if someone wealthier appeared on the horizon. It really seemed like all she wanted was that ring, nothing more. Right after the breakup, Jake tried to get into my house again while I was gone. I have no idea why, but thinking back, maybe he was after the emergency cash in the safe, or thought our family jewelry was still there. I hadn't told him yet that I moved everything to a bank vault. I hated even considering that my own son might break into my home, but he had stolen from us once before, so it wasn't impossible. Someone here advised me to change the locks. I did. Jake's key doesn't work anymore. I'm even thinking of installing security cameras now. Amber called me terrified when Jake showed up. He was pounding on the door, demanding she let him in. I tried calling him, no response. That must have scared him off, because according to Amber, he walked away right after his phone rang. He has a special ringtone set for my number, so he definitely knew it was me. He called me back later that evening. I didn't let him start yelling. I immediately demanded to know why he was trying to break into the house when I wasn't home. He had frightened his sister. She almost called the police. Jake dodged the question and instead began yelling about how I didn't trust him because I changed the locks. I told him, of course I don't trust you after what you did. He shouted that I should just be happy for him and that if his mother were still alive, she'd want him to propose with that ring. That set me off. I told him if she truly wanted that, she would have left the ring to him in her will. Then he started whining that everything was my fault. He repeated all the garbage Sarah had told him, how she called me stingy, how I supposedly didn't think she was good enough for him. I told him he was putting words in my mouth. I barely even knew Sarah and never interfered with their relationship, at least not until he stole the ring. When he tried to argue, I asked him, name one time I ever said something bad about Sarah before the ring incident. He went silent. He couldn't recall anything,
because I had hardly seen her at all during their entire relationship. I didn't even know they were dating until they'd been together for 3 months. But that wasn't the point anymore. I asked again why he tried getting into the house. He refused to answer, so I listed the possibilities myself. If he came for the ring or any other heirlooms, too late. Everything is secured elsewhere. If he wanted access to the emergency cash, he'd never get into the safe. And if he came to hurt his sister, I'd deal with him myself. Judging by his silence, I hit at least one nerve. Eventually, he said he was quitting his job, selling his apartment, and moving far away so he'd never have to speak to me again. His final words were, "Enjoy your perfect little daughter." I don't understand how my son changed so drastically in just 1 year. I never called Sarah a manipulative gold digger, only said she had wrapped him around her finger and loved shiny things. Not much difference, I know, but now it's painfully obvious she is manipulative, especially after the dramatic performance she put on trying to keep a ring that never belonged to her. She cried for days over a ring she knew was stolen. Then she exploded when she couldn't keep it or even get a replica. Because of her, my son cut me and his sister out of his life. It hurts. And I'm furious that he chose this path just to please a woman he'd only been dating for 8 months. That's not long enough to talk about marriage. I dated my wife for over 2 years before proposing. And honestly, I can't imagine how disastrous it would have been if Sarah had actually married my son. I know Jake will blame me for a long time. I don't know if we'll ever speak again. I hope we do someday. But right now, we both need distance. Amber is struggling too. She's grateful I got her ring back, but just as shocked as I am at what Jake has become. She calls him a jerk for shoving her aside while stealing the ring. Thankfully, she has plenty of support from me and the rest of the family. Jake has no support left. Relatives have been calling or messaging him to express their outrage. Even his former best friend stopped by to apologize to me. He and Jake had a huge fight over this whole mess, and when that friend refused to take his side, Jake cut him off too. Sarah, Jake's ex, also ran into trouble at home. Her parents contacted me to hear my version and later apologized for her behavior. They only knew part of the story and were horrified to learn the rest. They had always thought she was kind, but said she had changed a lot in recent years and they were disappointed in her. They previously helped her pay half the rent, but said they won't renew her lease once it expires. She can either pay it on her own or find a new place. Now she blames and curses me too. I don't know what's wrong with people these days. When I was Jake's age, people like this were rare. Now they're everywhere, spreading toxicity like a flood. All I can hope is that one day my son wakes up and finds his way back to being the good man he used to be. Whether he ever speaks to me or not, I'll still wish him happiness. Update 2. And please, stop asking me for photos of the ring. A lot of people have messaged me wanting to see it or order a similar one. I told my daughter about these posts, and she's proud of me, but she does not want the ring online. It's hers. I don't need a reason. Her choice is final, and I will respect it.
I'm not thrilled about the idea of posting photos either. If strangers start copying the ring, it'll lose what makes it special. I was fine with my son making a replica that would have stayed within the family, but there's no way I'm putting it online for everyone to duplicate. I deleted the pictures I had sent Jake a long time ago. The ring is stored in a bank vault now. It won't stay there forever. When I can afford it, I plan to buy a proper home safe. Over the weeks since my first post, I installed security cameras around the house, and thank God I did. For everyone asking whether my son got back together with Sarah, no, they're not together. Jake really is selling his apartment and hasn't spoken to me since that last phone call, the one where he wished me a nice life with my precious daughter because he didn't get what he wanted from me. I met with my lawyer and updated my will. I didn't cut him out entirely, but he lost a large portion of what he would have inherited. After everything that's happened, I can't bring myself to feel sorry for him anymore. My daughter Amber called him a simp, and once I looked up what that meant, I realized how accurate it is. But I don't want to stay angry or sad. Neither emotion does me any good. I'm trying to let go and move forward. Jake clearly chose a life without us. Maybe one day he'll realize how wrong he was, but I can't force him to rethink his choices. I ran into Sarah by accident recently. She spotted me at the mall while I was out with a friend. She started yelling across the crowd, calling me a stingy old miser. I didn't have to defend myself. My friend laughed and called her out as a thief and a greedy woman who only wanted my late wife's ring because she couldn't afford anything like it herself. People around us immediately turned to stare. Sarah flipped us off and stormed away, knocking things over, even a small child who started crying. When she realized she had hurt the kid, she sprinted off like she was escaping a crime scene. Later that day, she showed up at my doorstep, screaming that it was my fault her friends now call her a gold digger and won't speak to her. I told her plainly she is a gold digger. She had no right to that ring in the first place, and the way she cried for days over something she knew had been stolen, then dumped my son because he couldn't buy her what she wanted, is classic gold digger behavior. I told her I'd make sure she never sees that ring again. She kept screaming nonsense all the way back to her car. I hoped she'd finally leave us alone, but she didn't. For those who thought drugs were behind her and Jake's behavior, sorry to disappoint, but no. The police reports confirmed she was clean. Whatever's going on with her, it's all her own doing, and apparently Jake's too. Last week, Sarah was arrested for trying to break into my house. The cameras recorded her sneaking into my backyard and trying to hack down my back door with an axe. The alarm went off and she ran, but the front cameras captured her face and her car perfectly. She even dropped the axe with her fingerprints on it. By the time police arrived, she was gone, but they found her later at home. They were only going to arrest her for trespassing and attempted break-in, but she started fighting, so they had to take her down and drag her out. She clearly needs mental help. I spoke with her parents afterward. They offered to pay for the damaged door and told me what they knew. No drugs in her system. Serious mental health issues, yes. They told me they planned to move her out of town once the legal mess is handled. I don't know what happened after that, but honestly, it's not my place to pry. I do feel a little sorry for her. She seems genuinely unwell. I assumed Jake already knew since everyone else was talking about it, but he's completely cut off contact. Not just with me, but with his friends and extended family too. One of his coworkers finally reached out and said Jake is still furious about everything. He insists the ring would have been a small price to pay for his happiness. Now that Sarah is gone, he's switched to blaming her instead, calling her a crazy gold digger who ruined his life. It seems he only knows how to point the finger at others. Until he learns to take responsibility for his own actions, I don't see how we can repair our relationship. He's not going to get anywhere in life if he keeps deflecting blame. I hope some time alone helps him cool down and reflect on the mess he created. Update 3. Most people online have been supportive, but every now and then some random stranger messages me calling me a bad father or a Python psycho. Honestly, these people need a hobby. If their goal is to break me down, it's not working. Though it is annoying, not a single one of them offered a better solution or advice on how I should have handled any of this. They just want to yell at someone. One of them even lost their account, not because of me, but because they were just trolling everywhere. Most recently, someone messaged me from an account created the day before. Maybe it was the same guy. Do these people really have nothing better to do? If anyone has criticism, fine, but at least offer real suggestions instead of calling me a terrible father or a monster. People who only want to argue and insult do nothing to improve the situation. End of update.
They do all of this just to feed their own egos. And honestly, you can tell something's wrong with these people if their only source of entertainment is harassing a widower who's simply trying to hold his family together. Real mature, right? And for those trolls insisting I should have acted differently, let's go over the facts. First, my son showed my late wife's heirloom ring to his gold-digging girlfriend without my permission. Second, I gave him a fair chance to ask his sister for the ring properly, since he wanted it to propose. She refused, and that should have been the end of it. Third, he stole the ring, attacked his own sister, and within an hour slipped it onto his girlfriend's finger like nothing happened. Fourth, I was dragged through the mud for demanding the return of a stolen heirloom that belonged to my late wife and was legally willed to my daughter. Fifth, I even tried to help them get a replica made, but his girlfriend threw a tantrum because she didn't get the original, and my son couldn't afford a proper copy. Sixth, after she dumped him, my son tried to break into my house, likely to steal something else. Seventh, his ex tried to publicly humiliate me and then knocked over a child during one of her outbursts. Eighth, the same ex-girlfriend tried to break down my back door with an axe and was arrested. Ninth, and now my son blames literally everyone except himself, while the only people supporting him are trolls online. If after all of that, I'm still being painted as the villain, then the people writing these messages seriously need their heads checked. Yes, I changed the locks. That's a normal reaction when someone breaks into your home, even if that someone is your own son. No, I wasn't trying to escalate anything. Jake and Sarah escalated it on their own. I wanted to talk things out calmly, but all they did was demand what they felt entitled to. And I wasn't going to pay for their replica either. When my wife passed away, my son inherited over $50,000 and his mother's car. My daughter inherited the family jewelry. That seems perfectly fair to me. My son used all the money as a down payment on a nice apartment. And for the record, I paid for his college, and I'll pay the same for my daughter when her time comes. I don't have a favorite child, but sometimes people behave horribly, and you just can't fix that for them. Someone told me my son probably packed up and left because his pride won't let him admit he's wrong. He wants a fresh start somewhere no one knows him. I can understand that on some level, but it doesn't change the fact that he dug this hole himself. Now I have a son who hates me for the consequences of his own actions. Relatives and friends message me constantly about him, even though I never asked. Meanwhile, my daughter is terrified he'll come back and hurt her. I'm already arranging therapy for her as soon as possible. I installed a full home security system with cameras. That decision already paid off. His ex-girlfriend tried to break down my back door. I tried to help my son become a better person without enabling him, but he rejected every attempt and shoved my hand away, figuratively and literally. So tell me, trolls, how does any of this make me a monster? Final update. My son just left town. I hoped the drama would finally end, but it didn't. Yes, Jake sold his apartment, no idea for how much, but he probably made a decent profit. Last Saturday, he loaded everything he could into his car and drove off. Rumors never died down, so the whole town knows what he did. At one point, Jake almost got into a fight at a bar after someone confronted him publicly. I tried to visit him one last time, to talk, maybe reconcile before he moved away. By then I'd realized leaving town was probably the best thing he could do. His reputation here was completely destroyed. But when I knocked, he refused to open the door. I told him I just wanted to talk, but he yelled through the door that I ruined his life and there was nothing to discuss. Then he went quiet, only to suddenly bring up the ring again, saying I should have just let Sarah keep it or helped pay for the replica. Then he said it didn't matter anymore because Sarah turned out to be unstable and they broke up for good, and he didn't want anything to do with me or his sister ever again. That made me snap. I told him his behavior was unacceptable. He attacked his own sister and stole from his own family. He was lucky I never called the police. Everyone who knew what he did took my daughter's side. When the entire town thinks you're wrong, that's a pretty massive red flag. I told him to stop this performance fueled by his pride. Whether it was grief for his mother, or the fact that he's now the same age I was when he was born, or something else, I didn't know. But he knew he was wrong and refused to admit it, and I was done covering for him.
He never spread rumors about the ring. He and Sarah did that. I'm tired of being blamed for the mess he created himself. Only narcissists and cowards behave like that. His mother and I raised him better, and he knows she would never have approved of this, but she's not here to tell him. If you steal something that isn't yours, you don't get to blame the owner for wanting it back. He went silent for a few seconds, then yelled, "Screw you, Dad." I heard him crying and breaking things inside. A neighbor at the end of the hallway peeked out and quickly hid again, so that little scene will definitely spread as gossip too. He refused to say anything else, so I left. But as I was exiting the building, a police car pulled up. 2 officers stepped out and asked for my name. When I told them, they said someone reported that I was trying to break into an apartment. I explained that I'd been arguing with my son through the door and never tried to force my way in. I only knocked. I told them the entire story, mentioned the neighbor who saw and heard everything, and reminded them the building had security cameras. One officer went upstairs to talk to the neighbor. The other put me in handcuffs.
He was very polite and explained that the handcuffs were just a precaution, since they still didn't know who was telling the truth. I told him I understood he was just doing his job, and he let me sit on a nearby bench. After about 10 or 15 minutes, hard to tell since I couldn't check my watch, the officer who went inside radioed back that the neighbor's story mostly matched mine. Several other neighbors also confirmed hearing our conversation through the door. Then he said he would check the security footage, which took even longer. Since I still couldn't see the time, all I could do was sit and wait. The kind officer turned on the radio on his phone so I wouldn't be completely bored. Eventually, the second officer radioed again and told his partner to take off the handcuffs because the cameras backed me up. The audio wasn't great, but it was clear enough to show that I never tried to break into the apartment. Once I was uncuffed, the 2 officers talked quietly for a moment. Then they asked if I really was the father whose son had stolen the ring that belonged to his late mother. I admitted it and asked how they knew. They said the story had already been going around the station, and once they heard my version, everything clicked. One officer said he had been on duty the day Sarah was arrested and described how she acted like a wild animal, trying to bite people and screaming threats like, "Do you know who my parents are? I'll have you all ruined." His wording was much harsher than that. I could only stare at the ground in embarrassment. The officers told me to go home and suggested I avoid coming back. I nodded and left. As I walked away, I noticed them going back into the building, probably to talk to Jake. I'm certain he was the one who called the police because later some of his neighbors messaged me online saying the officers had chewed him out for a false report so badly that he nearly cried. They also reminded him about the ring incident and said his behavior was pathetic. Judging by the timeline, Jake must have exaggerated heavily because the police showed up almost immediately after we started talking through the door. He's lucky he didn't get arrested for wasting their time. When I got home, my daughter Amber comforted me. She said I did everything I could and that it wasn't my fault Jake turned into a jerk. Still, it hurt. Maybe I've lost my son forever. I took the next day off work, shut myself in my office, played Dragon Warrior on my NES emulator, and ate vanilla ice cream just to calm down. Jake left town over the weekend. Maybe I'll never see him again. But if I do, I hope he realizes I've always cared about him. Yes, he treated me horribly, but I'm still his father. If he knocked on my door tomorrow wanting to talk, I'd let him in. I just hope it won't take 10 or 12 years for that day to come. Some people asked how big our town is if rumors spread so fast. It's not tiny, more like slightly below average in size. The reason gossip traveled so quickly was my wife's enormous and tight-knit family. They're everywhere in this town, no exaggeration. I could bump into one of them just going for a walk or buying groceries, and many of them love to gossip.
When Jake started looking for support from relatives online, that lit the fuse. First, they told him exactly what they thought of his behavior, and then they repeated the story to everyone they knew. The situation spun out of control before I even realized what was happening. Jake got his 15 minutes of shame, and it should have ended there. But his ex, Sarah, made everything worse by telling the story to absolutely everyone, trying to get sympathy. That doubled the drama, and soon both of them had lost all their friends. People I had never met started messaging me, even though I never shared my contact information anywhere. No idea how they found me, but at this point it doesn't matter. Now that Jake has left town, things are finally calming down. Within the first week or two, I managed to convince most relatives to delete their posts about Jake, but the damage was already done. I begged people to stop spreading the story. I didn't want attention. I just wanted life to go back to normal. But everything Jake and Sarah did only made the mess bigger. Some also asked about the guy who recognized Jake in the bar and confronted him. From what I heard, he was a neighbor of one of Jake's ex-friends, so it's no surprise he knew what Jake looked like. And yes, even at my age, I still love old video games. It's my little way to relax. My kids never cared for them, and my wife didn't like them either, so it's always been my personal hobby. I don't play often. Maybe once or twice a year, I speed run Dragon Warrior using cheats, because I've never been a great gamer and probably never will be.
I refused to date my friend because of his toxic family. I'm 30, and I have a close friend from college whom I'll call Marlon. He's 31. We studied and graduated together and still meet for lunch breaks since our offices are just a few minutes walk apart. I work in the federal government, and he works at an investment firm. Last October, I let Marlon move in with me after his girlfriend, Paige, 29, broke up with him and kicked him out of her place. Paige is Jewish, openly bi, and liberal. She's a tattoo artist who owns her own studio. Her body is beautifully covered in tattoos, and her hair is jet black. Unlike Marlon, she knows how to stand up for herself and enjoys a debate from time to time. A little background. Marlon comes from a traditional evangelical family in Mississippi. His family moved to the San Francisco Bay Area in 2020 during the pandemic to be closer to him, or more accurately, so he could provide for them. Marlon's mother is on welfare, his father receives social assistance, and his brother Ryan, 35, is unemployed and lives off Marlon and their parents. They all live in a 2-bedroom apartment. Marlon, as I said, now lives in my house, but previously lived with Paige. Marlon's family is toxic. They treat him with no respect, constantly criticize him, yet coddle Ryan. They attack Marlon over any excuse, belittle and mock him, even though he's the only one in the family with a college degree and the only one paying for rent, groceries, internet, and everything else. During their relationship, Paige and Marlon had a rule not to interfere in each other's family's matters unless it directly affected them. Paige repeatedly expressed her concerns about Marlon's family and how they treated him, but didn't push further because of this agreement and because his family wasn't directly interfering with her life at the time. She also tried to avoid contact with Marlon's family because she was disgusted by their behavior. Once, when she interacted with his family, she clashed with Marlon's parents because his mother made snide comments about her tattoos and demanded she remove the pride flag, the Ukraine flag, and the BLM banner from her studio. They also disapproved that Paige owned her home, which she inherited from her grandfather, seeing it as shameful for a man if a woman owned a house and business. Marlon even told me his parents didn't like Paige due to her background and suggested they might accept her if she removed all her tattoos and adopted the traditional evangelical lifestyle they raised him and Ryan in, basically wanting her to convert to their faith and become a traditional housewife. Marlon did a poor job defending his girlfriend. He tried to make compromises, like asking her to cover her tattoos or remove the flags for peace. Paige refused and threatened to break up with him if he kept pressuring her. Marlon is genuinely kind,
smart, and supportive. He helped me through a difficult time in my first year of college when his family wasn't around. He's independent and complete as a person. But since his family moved closer and re-entered his life, it's as if all his spirit was drained. Paige, I, and other friends tried to talk to him about it, encouraging him to cut ties, but he desperately seeks their approval and recognition, so he doesn't listen. Things escalated when Marlon's family demanded more money for his mother's credit card debts, her shopping, and because they spent much of the money he gave them on traveling to rallies last year's presidential elections. When Marlon couldn't give them more, they turned to Paige, trying to demand that she, as his girlfriend, contribute financially. At first, Paige ignored them, but it reached a breaking point when Marlon's mother and Ryan came to her studio demanding money. They believed that as his girlfriend, everything Paige owned belonged to Marlon, and everything Marlon owned belonged to them. His mother even hit Paige when Ryan tried to break into the cash register. A barber friend across the street saw the commotion and, along with 2 clients, helped restrain Ryan. The police were called, and both Marlon's mother and Ryan were arrested. Paige filed charges, citing an attempted robbery and assault. Regarding my own relationship with Paige, we're just acquaintances. We've crossed paths at events, including those with Marlon, and follow each other on Instagram and Facebook. After Marlon told me about the breakup, I reached out to Paige out of curiosity to hear her side. She explained everything, including how Marlon acted. She told me that after filing a restraining order against his family, Marlon begged her to withdraw it, saying he didn't want to lose his family. He didn't ask if she was okay or apologize, which led Paige to end things immediately. Paige warned me to stay away from his family, highlighting his mother's obsessive behavior regarding grandchildren. When I confronted Marlon, I demanded he apologize to Paige and set boundaries with his family. He eventually apologized to Paige after a couple of months. I explained that he earns more than I do, but barely manages to support himself while covering 3 adults' expenses. I reminded him that he had already lost friends and his girlfriend due to his attachment to them. He seemed to understand that he still struggles with boundaries, yet he continues paying their debts and bills. I live in my family home with 4 bedrooms, which my parents bought in the 1990s. They moved to Seattle 2 years ago and allowed me to live here as long as I cover expenses. 7 months after Paige broke up with Marlon, Marlon still lives with me. We remain friends, but I require him to pay his share for rent, groceries, and utilities. A few evenings ago, while watching Netflix, Marlon asked if I would go on a real date with him. In college, we had discussed the possibility of dating when his family wasn't around. He's a good person, and we've spent a lot of time together, but nothing happened then. I paused the movie and spoke to him seriously. I said that if it was just about him, I wouldn't mind, because without his family around, he's kind, reliable, and supportive. But I pointed out that almost all his income goes to supporting 3 unemployed adults, and reminded him what happened with Paige. I asked him, if we were together, married, with kids, how could you support our family while providing for your parents and brother? Could you set boundaries with them? When Paige and I asked you to do it before, you failed. Would your parents expect me to support them too? And our cultural backgrounds differ. My mixed race, my mom's white, my dad's native and Catholic, not very religious. Could that also be a problem given your family? Marlon said he would try to find a balance and expected me to occasionally help his parents for peace. He also reassured me that my race wouldn't matter if I agreed to follow their rules when around them. I took a deep breath and said that if he didn't completely cut ties with his parents, I wouldn't date him, and any future relationships would likely fail due to their interference. Since that night, we haven't discussed his parents or dating. For clarity, I never intended to start a romantic relationship with Marlon. We agreed yesterday that while he has feelings for me, we shouldn't date, mainly due to my race. It would create issues with his mother. Marlon still misses Paige and said he might try to get back with her. I reminded him to leave Paige alone and that until he gets serious help and cuts his parents out of his life, any new relationship would be a bad decision. Yes, we have a written monthly rental agreement. He pays me rent every month, small compared to market rates. If I choose not to renew, I must give 30 days notice. A couple of our mutual friends are already encouraging him to find his own place and start living independently. Hopefully, this will give him confidence and help him gradually distance himself from his parents. But who knows?
Update 1. I don't even know where to start, given how complicated everything has become. After Marlon's ex, Paige, broke up with him last October, Paige and I started talking, became friends, and even went to the gym together. Paige recently began dating a guy from our gym whom I'll call Virgil, 33. It turns out Paige and Virgil went to the same school, a few years apart. Over the 7 months since Paige broke up with Marlon, he's been struggling to support his freeloading family. Without Paige, he's basically falling apart. On top of that, he constantly faces humiliation from his family, especially complaints about not earning enough. He also said he misses the support and comfort Paige used to provide after negative interactions with his family, something she consistently did. Despite our and other friends' attempts to convince Marlon to let her go, he kept trying to talk to Paige and win her back. For 7 months, he came to her home or studio to talk, but she always turned him away. He stopped, at least until recently, after Paige threatened to call the police and get a restraining order if he showed up uninvited again. Marlon also complained that he can no longer handle his family's growing demands, debts, shopping, and their constant pressure, especially his mother, who keeps insisting she wants grandchildren. As some of you guessed from my previous post, I'm also convinced that one reason Marlon wants to get back with Paige, or less so to be with me, is that he needs a woman to help him financially support his family, act as a buffer between him and his relatives, and provide emotional support. At the end of March, Marlon found out Paige had a new boyfriend. She's dating Virgil, and he panicked. He started whining that he didn't want to lose her. I reminded him that she had already broken up with him, so it was over. Despite her new relationship, Marlon tried texting, calling, messaging, and even creating new accounts just to talk to her, believing they could still discuss things. I told him, stop. I even showed him a video Paige recorded specifically for him, where she directly asked him to stop contacting her. Then came Saturday, May 17th. I took time off and went away with a man I met online, whom I'll call Jack, 55. He took me to his mountain cabin for a week. While there, I got a notification that someone was at the door. It was Marlon's parents demanding to speak with him. I assumed Marlon wasn't home, so he didn't answer. Through the video intercom, I told him he was probably at work and asked what they needed. Marlon's parents immediately started complaining about how disappointed they were that their son doesn't earn enough to support them, and how they needed more money for his mother's legal bills, her gambling addiction, and medical expenses. Marlon's father added that he expected Marlon to pay for a Denali pickup he wanted, as his previous truck had been repossessed. Then Marlon's mother asked if I was dating or sleeping with him. I said, no, nothing is going on between us. I added that Marlon had told me she didn't want me dating her son because I'm too dark-skinned for her, so that wasn't an issue. She replied that given her age and declining health, she just wants grandchildren, even if they are mixed race. I reminded her that I'm just Marlon's friend and legally his landlord. That was it. She said that if Marlon and I had sex and I became pregnant, she would choose the baby's name. Then they left. I was in shock and even felt physically sick. On Friday, while leaving with Jack, I had turned on my phone to save battery and not be distracted. I saw numerous missed calls and messages from Marlon and my close friend Tiffany, 30. Jack drove me home, and as soon as I entered, I saw Marlon's room completely trashed. The living room was partially destroyed, and he was sitting on the couch, more broken than before. I asked what happened. He said his parents had come to my house again. He let them in, and they immediately started berating him for not earning enough to pay their debts, bills, and more. In the end, Marlon agreed to take out a loan to fund his family.
Then he and his father went to a dealership where Marlon signed the papers for the pickup his father wanted. When he returned home, he was so upset that he trashed his room. I called Tiffany. She's not only my close friend, but also a friend of Paige and Marlon. She came over. We talked to Marlon, tried to calm him, but firmly reminded him again that he needs to cut off contact with his parents. Tiffany reminded him that before his parents' visit, Marlon was happy and confident, with a stable relationship with Paige and handling work well. Now his life is falling apart. I also told him about my conversation with his mother through the intercom and noted that his parents are now starting to indirectly affect my life. Marlon apologized and said he would try to handle it. Tiffany, from a well-off family, offered to pay for therapy for Marlon, but he refused, saying he probably just needs to try something else to gain his parents' approval, still justifying their behavior by claiming we misunderstood them. I was going to tell him that his family lacks boundaries, basic human decency, and self-control, but at that moment it felt pointless. Tiffany and I cleaned up the mess in the living room, and Marlon in his room. Later that evening, I spoke with Tiffany and Paige about what we could do. Paige suggested trying to contact other relatives who might support Marlon. I'm leaning toward evicting Marlon from my house, but I don't want to do it until we find a place where he can stay. I'll post another update if anything changes.
Update 2. All future updates will be from Paige's perspective. Hi everyone. I came across a post my friend wrote about my relationship with my ex, Marlon, and how she took him in after I kicked him out. I want to clarify that Paige in her story is me. I spoke with the author and told her I had no issue with her sharing this story. After reading her posts and many of your comments, I felt the need to clarify what my life with Marlon was actually like. The author gave Marlon 30 days to move out. His mother, Sylvia, 68, managed to get him fired, and Marlon is struggling to piece his life back together. That's mostly context for what the author already mentioned. Now, I want to tell my story. I'm originally from New Jersey, but moved to California in late October 2021 after my grandfather passed away a year earlier, leaving me a house in Oakland. I didn't know anyone here, but about a week after moving, I met Marlon at a supermarket I frequented. We started talking after I complimented his Lincoln Park shirt. He had messy hair, a slight stutter, seemed a bit awkward and quirky, but in a cute way. After running into each other several times and chatting, I pulled out a marker and wrote my number on his hand, telling him to text or call if he wanted to hang out outside the supermarket. For about 2 weeks, Marlon and I texted and called nearly every day. 2 weeks later, during a phone call, I told him about growing up in a Star Path environment and casually asked if he wanted to visit the Science and Space Center in the city, reopening that week. He enthusiastically agreed. Our first date was Saturday, November 13. I liked that he was smart, passionate, a bit quirky, yet genuinely pleasant. He arrived by taxi, so I drove us to dinner at a Chinese restaurant near the tattoo parlor where I worked. I later bought that parlor from the previous owner when he retired. I explained that around Christmas, while Christian families have traditional dinners, many Jewish families, including mine, go to Chinese restaurants. The date went wonderfully, and we kept seeing each other. Over the 3 years we were together, I shared everything about myself and my family. I told him that on my father's side, I'm Czech Jewish, on my mother's side, Sephardic Jewish, and that my great-grandfather on my father's side was the only family member to survive Auschwitz. That trauma shaped the value I placed on family closeness and support. My mother is from Israel, but immigrated to the U.S. in the 1970s to be closer to family. P.S. No, I'm not an Israeli citizen because my mother didn't register my birth at the consulate. I also told Marlon that years ago I was kidnapped, raped, and tortured, which caused PTSD and substance addiction that I fought for years. Few people know the full story, even in my family. I told Marlon everything, but made him promise to keep it a secret. Marlon, in contrast, was very guarded about his family, which I respected. Over time, he shared that he grew up in a very conservative and strict environment, that his family despises people with higher education, and that he is the primary provider. He tries to earn his parents' love,
But I told him parental love can't be earned. It should be mutual and based on care. His immediate family was extremely toxic. His brother Ryan mocked him his whole life, encouraged by his parents. They ridiculed him for going to college, yet now his parents treat him like an ATM, expecting him to financially support Ryan indefinitely. Marlon does have an aunt and uncle, who I'll call Grace, Sylvia's older sister, and her husband, who were genuinely kind and loving toward him. Grace often defended him when Sylvia yelled at him at family gatherings. When Grace intervened, Sylvia usually backed off, though she'd later take it out on Marlon. During our 3 years together, we visited my family on the East Coast 3 times for holidays: Passover 2022 and 2024, and Hanukkah 2023. For Marlon, interacting with my family was a cultural shock. My sister Noah, 26, and I could disagree or even argue with our parents, and it was fine. We could openly discuss anything. Our parents respected personal space and privacy and made Marlon feel welcome. For Hanukkah, my mom even gave him a gift. All this, open discussion, healthy disagreements, respect for privacy, was foreign to him. His father encouraged debates to develop critical thinking. My parents supported my sister and I equally, without favoritism or guilt-tripping. Marlon said our family dynamic seemed like a TV show or movie because his own experience taught him to see such dynamics as abnormal. Many commenters asked why I stayed with Marlon so long. Here's why. For the first 2 years, when his parents weren't meddling in our lives, things were genuinely good. I enjoyed my time with him. He was kind, attentive, passionate, a little quirky, and genuinely sweet. Alone, our relationship was wonderful. I first met Marlon's family on New Year's Eve 2022. He said his parents wanted a normal home celebration and asked if I would host. I agreed. To act as a buffer, I invited my friends, Tiffany, 30, Luna, 29, and my cousin Jacob, 33, with his wife and kids. From the start, Marlon's family was unpleasant. When they learned I owned a home and had my own income, they seemed genuinely offended. Many things in my house offended them: the kids watching shows, my old Bernie 2016 shirt, and my political humor. I jokingly said, well then I am too, because I grew up in a family allowed to talk back, which upset Sylvia. At dinner, Marlon's father and Ryan called him a disappointment and a loser. I asked Ryan, what do you do for work? Which college did you attend? He shut up immediately. I told Ryan and his father that Marlon was the only one in the family to go to college, the only one with a job and paying for everything. They were in no position to belittle him. Sylvia yelled incoherently at me. I laughed in her face, which angered her more. After a few more minutes of argument, Marlon's family left without even waiting for the countdown. Afterward, Marlon complained I had snapped at his parents. Later, as we sat with friends and celebrated the new year, Marlon stepped out to take a call from his mother. She yelled at him for letting me defend him. I reminded him I was his girlfriend, and yes, I would defend him as I expected he would defend me. We argued and slept in separate rooms that night. He later apologized, acknowledging he appreciated my support, as only Aunt Grace had done so before, but said his mom wanted me to apologize to them. I refused. Honestly, I should have seen this New Year's dinner as a huge red flag. Most of Marlon's income went to supporting his parents and older brother, 3 ungrateful, demanding adults living off him. They mocked him, belittled him, and demanded more. I tried not to intervene unless it affected me or our relationship, though I advised him to gradually reduce financial support. I also asked questions like, have your parents ever thanked you? Does dealing with them make you happy? Can you support us and them if we ever marry and have kids? Marlon couldn't answer and waved it off, saying, but they're family. Eventually, he asked me to stop bringing it up, and I did. Things started spiraling around July 2023, when his family became much more intrusive. Sylvia began micromanaging him, demanding raises or job changes. Marlon was startled by every phone call, constantly summoned to their apartment to be yelled at, and sometimes they even came to my house to humiliate him in my living room. After New Year's, I never opened the door for them again. Marlon did. Honestly, I should have immediately banned them from my home. Whenever they came to humiliate Marlon, I defended him, arguing with them, while Marlon defended them while I defended him. Eventually, they turned on me just for supporting him. After they left, Marlon and I argued because he defended them. He said he was trying to keep the peace and earn their respect. Then he said his parents disliked that I was Jewish, had tattoos, and displayed flags in my salon. He tried to convince me to compromise, remove flags, cover tattoos, even considered changing faith for his mother. I was furious. I told Marlon his parents would never set foot in my home again, and if they appeared again, I'd call the police. I also threatened to break up with him because it was clear he wanted me to change for their approval. Marlon started backpedaling, begging me not to leave and promising to set boundaries with his parents.
He never did, and yes, that was another chance for me to leave him that I didn't take. Over the next few months, I increasingly found Marlon crying. He would berate himself, repeating that he needed to try harder. He was in a truly awful state. I comforted him, hugged him during panic attacks, and was his emotional support, and I don't regret it because that's what I do for everyone I love. But now I understand that support has to be mutual. In the following months, I hardly had any contact with his family. But then Marlon's mother, Sylvia, started calling and texting me, demanding that I support them financially as well. She said that as Marlon's future wife, it was my duty to provide for them, let them live in my home, and that since Marlon was the man of the house, I should submit to him, essentially giving him control over my finances. Meanwhile, he was still expected to support his family, but now at my expense. I tried ignoring her or abruptly hanging up during her rants, but that only provoked more outrageous demands. Sylvia asked if Marlon and I were planning to have children and claimed she wanted to choose our child's name herself. Once, she even messaged me to find a girlfriend for Ryan. It all weighed on me so heavily that I tried talking to Marlon, but he didn't take it seriously, brushing it off. A couple of times he even joked about it. I stopped trying to discuss it and told him simply to tell his family to stop contacting me. Of course, that didn't work. In October last year, Sylvia and Ryan came into my salon demanding that I support them. I told Sylvia she was not my responsibility and that if Marlon wanted to give them money, that was his choice, but I was done. She didn't get it. She kept whining about income, credit cards, and so on. While she was whining, I noticed Ryan climbing over the counter, trying to open the cash register. That was too much. I grabbed my phone and called the police. While talking to the operator, I suddenly felt a hit to my face, then was pushed into the shelves and fell. I froze for about 5 seconds before realizing Sylvia was scratching my face and arms, trying to grab the phone. Doug, 53, a barber and my friend from the barbershop across the street, ran into my salon with a couple of clients. One client pulled Sylvia off me, and Doug pinned Ryan to the floor. Another passerby and one of my clients helped restrain Sylvia and Ryan. The police arrived. I showed them the security footage. Ryan and Sylvia were arrested, and I was taken to the hospital after the attack. I filed a report. That's why Ryan is now in jail and Sylvia got a fine. Ryan was also charged with assault because he had used a wallet chain and a chair to hit Doug and one of the bystanders helping. When Marlon came home later that evening, he barged in screaming at me for calling the police, complaining that now he had to pay their legal fees, and demanding I retract my statement and tell the police I made it all up, despite video evidence and witnesses of Ryan attacking 2 others. I had a split lip, scratches on my neck, a concussion, and bruises on my face. I want to clarify one detail from the author's first post. Marlon began pressuring me to drop the restraining order only after I had broken up with him. I looked at him for a few seconds and said, "You didn't even ask if I was okay." Marlon immediately blurted out, "Why should I care if you're fine?" trying to backtrack. I told him to just shut up. There was another pause, and I said, "Your mother called me a junkie in the salon. How does she know?" He was silent. I jumped up and screamed, "How does she know this?" That's when Marlon admitted he had told his mother about what happened to me because she wanted to smear me.
I told Marlon I was done. I couldn't deal with his family anymore. I didn't feel safe around them. He had broken my trust. It was killing me to watch him humiliate himself to please a family that would never love him. Most importantly, I couldn't be with someone who couldn't support me and whom I couldn't trust. I couldn't be with someone with whom I couldn't see a healthy future. I cried as I said I was breaking up because I couldn't take it anymore. Marlon tried backpedaling again, begging me not to leave, saying things like, "We can talk, we can fix everything if we just discuss it." But when he said, "I want to make both your family and you happy, so if we..." I yelled. I hadn't been happy with him for the past 15 months. Marlon asked, "Can't you just pretend to be happy?" I replied, "That's what you do with your parents. You pretend to be happy." He had nothing to say to that. I took a breath and calmly told him to pack his things. He had 4 days to leave my house, and I didn't want to see him or his belongings when I returned. I went to the bedroom, packed my things and laptop into a backpack, and went to Tiffany asking if I could stay a few days while Marlon moved out. They agreed. That night, Marlon flooded me with calls and messages, begging to talk. I responded only twice, once via SMS, once on Facebook, warning that if he was still at my house by Wednesday, I would call the police and get a restraining order against him. On Monday, the author called me saying she reluctantly agreed to take Marlon in. On Wednesday, I asked Tiffany's husband, Christian, 35, to drive me home because I didn't want to go alone in case Marlon or his family was there. When we arrived, Marlon's car and belongings were gone. Christian helped me change the locks. A few days later, after Marlon moved in with the author, she contacted me to meet. We had drinks, and I told her most of what had happened. I also advised her to set clear boundaries with Marlon and keep his family away for her safety. Yes, if you're wondering, I'm okay now. For nearly 8 months after the breakup, Marlon continued calling, messaging from different accounts, and even came to my home and salon about 4 times to talk. I usually told him to leave or ignored him. After his rehearsed speeches, which I had stopped listening to, he would leave. The author and Tiffany also promised to keep Marlon, especially his family, away from me, given the restraining order against his relatives. As a side note, I'm now dating Virgil. We went to the same school, though he was several years older. We reconnected in June last year when I learned he had moved to California and was going to the same gym as me. He said he relocated for work, and we started hanging out occasionally, initially just as friends, coffee, walks. I showed him around the city since I was still with Marlon at the time. We officially started dating in March this year. I hadn't told the author, but the last incident with Marlon happened a couple of weeks after I started dating Virgil. Virgil was driving me home when I saw Marlon sitting on my porch. I got out and asked what he was doing. He said the key I had given him years ago no longer worked. Marlon tried to talk to me, rambling nonsense, asking for a second chance, claiming he could forgive me for being with another man if I gave him one. Virgil told Marlon to leave, but he ignored him and kept yelling, including about his mother still following me on Instagram with a new account and disapproving that I'm dating a black man. Virgil is mixed race. His mother is white, father black. I interrupted Marlon and told him I didn't care about his mother's opinion. We no longer see each other, and he needs to leave. I stood between him and Virgil to prevent a fight. I told Virgil to ignore Marlon and that I'd explain everything at home. Once inside, Marlon suddenly shouted that I was still his girlfriend and that I was ruining our chance to be together. He then turned to Virgil and asked, "Do you know she's a junkie and a criminal?" I ran up, threw him against a column. Marlon tried to justify it, claiming he only said it to get my attention and that he just wanted to talk. I composed myself and told Marlon that if he came to my house or salon uninvited again, I would sue him, get a restraining order, and notify his employer officially that he was using sick leave to harass me. I reminded Marlon that if he lost his job, he wouldn't be able to support his parents. Then I calmly told him he still needed to cut contact with his family, reminded him that his mother and brother destroyed his relationship with me, and that he wouldn't have a normal life until he stopped letting them control him. I said I wanted him to be happy, just not with me. After Marlon left, I explained everything to Virgil. We talked, and he said he still wanted to be with me, which I appreciated.
He also added that if needed, I could get a restraining order, though I personally hope to avoid court if possible. I stayed with Marlon for 13 to 15 months, even though I was no longer happy, only because of the hollow hope that things would get better someday and the memory of how good the first 2 years were. Before I met his family, before they interfered, my life was good. Now I understand that Marlon of 2025 is not the Marlon of 2024. If I had a magic wand, I would go back to the late 1990s and ensure Marlon was taken from his parents by child services, so at least he could grow up in a healthy environment, even if it was a foster family. But I also know it's just as unrealistic as thinking his parents will ever truly love or appreciate him. Marlon believes he is noble and selfless because he cares for his ungrateful family. I can't break through that. I don't know how. Finally, why haven't I filed a restraining order against Marlon himself? A few days ago, he still had a job, and I knew that if I sued him or got an order, he could lose his job, and the stress could completely ruin him. Despite everything, I don't want to hurt him if I can avoid it. He never hit or threatened me. I just want him out of my life without destroying him further. Sorry if my account is a little chaotic. I wrote it all out overnight. I'm tired and my head is a mess. I've asked the author to attach my story to her update. Now we'll have a parallel story, somewhat unrelated, but also written by Paige, which I think everyone will find interesting.
Update 3. About 6 years ago, I was 24. I lived in New Jersey, had just finished college, and worked as a shift manager at a fast food restaurant while also doing an internship to become a tattoo artist. One day, a cashier named Jane asked me for help at the register. A man with his son was at the counter, and behind them stood a woman with 2 small children. The man explained that he was the father of the 10-year-old boy, and the woman was his ex. He was not the father of her other 2 children. That day was his custody day, and he had taken his son for lunch before going to a museum. The woman, coincidentally at the restaurant, demanded that he buy lunch for her children as well and take all 3 to the museum. The man said he was responsible only for his son. She argued that he should pay for all her children because their fathers were absent. I stepped in to handle the situation. The man ordered 2 combos for himself and his son and paid in cash. The woman tried to add her children's order to his, but I told her that was not possible and asked her to place her own order. She attempted to grab his wallet, but he pushed her away, and she left, leaving the children behind. The man wanted to buy fries and chili for her 2 children and personally take them to their mother. I added those items to his order, covering the cost from the restaurant. Update 4. Almost 11 months had passed since I broke up with Marlon. We reconnected via Skype to discuss a $3,200 debt. The first 7 to 10 minutes were about how he would start paying once he found work. Then Marlon began reminiscing about our relationship and justifying that he had tried to support his family and save our relationship. I redirected the conversation back to the debt, and when he continued to justify himself, I told him I had no interest in rekindling our relationship and that it was over. We agreed he would start paying $108 per month starting in January when he got a job. Marlon reported that he had started working administratively on his ranch and in business and would follow through with the agreement. As for me, Virgil and I are no longer together, but we remain close friends. We have different plans for the future. Casual meetups. I'm going to Oakland for a month and looking for casual meetups while I am there. I've already arranged a few meetings during my stay in New Zealand where I will visit my sister and her family.